across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to Tuesday, the 11th of November, Armistice Day. Let's just start with that. The day, of course, that the Allies and Germany signed that agreement which ended the Second World War. Later on, we'll talk more about what that means and whether the doom and gloom of the United Kingdom has meant that there's anything great left in Great Britain. I hope your Tuesday has started better than mine, but more of that later. You're waking up to the following headlines. Of course, Donald Trump, front page of The Sun, front and centre. Great article by Jack Elson. I'm going to try and get him on the show later. Beeb's billion-dollar bungle. Donald Trump demanding a full apology from the BBC by Friday, or has threatened to sue the corporation for $1 billion. Lawyers for the president demanded a full and fair retraction. Meanwhile, I mean, there's so much to talk about that, because all the people who are trying to literally defend the BBC's outrageous behaviour are all saying, well, it's just been politicised. This is just Trump trying to score points. We need to stand up to him. Missing the point, of course, that the BBC has been rotten to its core for years, and Tim Davie should have gone an age ago. Love to hear from you about that, as well as the old debate about the licence fee continues. Keir Starling, he's backed the BBC. There's a shock. Despite growing calls to scrap the licence fee, he said via his spokesman, proving that yet again he's about as switched on as the least switched on person in the world. The BBC is stronger than ever. I'd say there's a meltdown. I would say there's a great picture on the front of the Daily Mail this morning saying Deborah Turness, the head of news, watch out, because she'll wreak revenge. I think the whole thing is rotten, and I think it's going to collapse from the top. As ever on Morning Glory, we'd love your involvement. 0344 499 1000. Make your calls, send your voice notes. We're delighted to get them, and you text throughout the morning. 87222. It's where the nation comes to talk. More people listening than ever before. Make your voice be heard. It's Tuesday. This isn't shocking. A second small boat migrant who was sent back to France in the one in, one out, which has turned into 56 million in and 2 out. He's gone back to France because we deported him. But on Remembrance Sunday, whilst we were all remembering the past in larger numbers than ever, he snuck back into the United Kingdom. So of the 2 we have sent back, they've all come back, and he'll probably get £500 to disappear again. Thoughts on the migrant situation? And then, by the way, Rachel Reeves, I've seen the most ridiculous interview with her. She, by the way, has stuck up for the BBC, which tells me they are utterly screwed, because if Rachel Reeves is on your side, you've got no chance. She's finally admitted that she possibly will scrap the 2-child benefit. She will basically raise taxes, and there's all sorts of stuff that she is going to have to do because of the dire state of the country after the Tories left government. How long are we prepared to put up listening to excuses from a woman who patently is not up to a job? That, all in the news today, and loads more. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. It's Tuesday morning, which means a man who spent the weekend travelling to Sheffield to watch his beloved QPR not register a shot on target, and he's really, really hacked off about it. Peter Blacksley, good morning.
Good morning.
How much did you spend taking your 3 sons to Sheffield?
Yes, quite a lot of money, because they all fancied a drink and something to eat on Saturday, and so the bill was huge.
Was it money well spent, Peter Blacksley?
In terms of spending time with my 3 boys, it was wonderful and worth every penny. In terms of value for money from the 90 minutes of football we watched,
you learnt to answer questions by being a copper all those years. Let's crack on. Front page of The Sun, the Beeb's billion-dollar bungle. I'd love your take on this. Mine is very quickly. I think the sadness, completely get where Trump's coming from. I think the sadness is all the idiots like Ed Davey and everybody are now saying this is the BBC that's being attacked by a foreign body, and it's a fine and upstanding institution. No, it's not.
If Ed Davey stuck to water slides, I'd be a lot happier. That's really where he needs to remain quiet. Look, this splicing of the interview is so egregious and is so in defiance of what the BBC says it exists for. It's so very serious that I was kind of thinking, this must be illegal, mustn't it? And of course, now, whilst it might not be criminal, it most definitely is worthy of civil action, and Donald Trump has quite rightly, understandably, put the BBC on notice. Make a fulsome apology, make it public, sort it out, or else legal action will follow. And I do not blame him. It is such a fundamental breach by an organisation that calls itself the national broadcaster.
And I think there's the point, because you would want your national broadcaster, we were saying this yesterday, weren't we, to be impartial, to be unbiased. But we all know, and I know what people say. They say, oh, you know, you Talk is a centre-right organisation that's putting the boot into the BBC. No, not at all. I just see a landscape, Pete, that's changed over the last few years. Television, how we receive our news, everything has changed. People get them off their phones. They get them from the New Talk app. Please do download it as soon as you can. All those sorts of things. And people go, right, so it's like the situation with this country. People go, so I'm being forced to pay out 175 quid for something that I don't actually want to watch. How come this level playing field for everybody else means that the BBC gets extra incentives? And then people look at it and then they go, and in the sense of like being given money willy-nilly, you have a left-leaning agenda. We listed it yesterday, the Hamas documentary that turned out to be voiced by a Hamas official's son. You think about, I mean, sorry, Ed Davey, and all of you, you know, you think about, I can't even remember his name. What's that newsreader, the paedophile? Hugh Edwards, right? I would, if I was Tim Davey, I would have not rested until I ensured that I got that man's pension back. There are people paying their taxes in this country thinking we're paying for a paedophile to walk around every day and do whatever. Martine Croxall, the newsreader, who dared to change pregnant people to pregnant woman and got internally investigated. Gary Lineker, Bob Villan. He was at Glastonbury, Tim Davey was at Glastonbury and allowed that vile anti-Semite to be broadcast on the streaming section for 5 hours. This isn't just about Donald Trump, but it is interesting, is it not? Because we had government sources telling us yesterday, we got this officially on Morning Glory, that they had lent on Tim Davey and Deborah Turness to go because Trump was angry. Trump will be the focus. This is much, much more. I believe it's been rotten to the core for ages.
And so many of those examples, and I'm going to pick up on Bob Villan, if I may, just clearly shows that in so many regards, the organisation is employing people who are morally bankrupt. If you are sitting there with a bank of screens in front of you, doing the live coverage from Glastonbury, you're BBC trained, you're a state employee in essence, and the minute you hear that vile creature shout, death, death, you go flick the switch, cut it off. You make an editorial decision there and then to stop that.
Completely agree.
And people did not. It's such an easy thing to do, to pull the plug, cut to something else. They've got acres of cameras, loads of cameras, loads of footage, loads of presenters there. They could quite easily have gone, bump, that's enough, and now we cut to.
But the issue is, you talked about BBC training, you talked about, you know, the state employee, which I haven't heard, and I think it's absolutely fantastically described, because when you're paying your money, the state I mean, what was it you said yesterday? £5.39 billion they get in terms of the licence fee and the offshoots, merchandise and commissioning rights and all of that. There is no doubt, whether you work on Talk or you work anywhere else, that if you look at the BBC in a dispassionate way, you would say that their ideology is to the left, that they have been anti-Israel and pro-Hamas, that the transgender debate. I am all, by the way, whatever anybody says, I'm all for both sides of the argument, but what hacks me off so much about the whole way this country's going, and the BBC to me typifies this, is we have this generation that say, This is my view, and I say to them, that's great, this is my view. You know, your view is misogynistic, sexist, homophobic, racist, fascistic, and you need to be cancelled and trodden into the earth. I think a democracy means that everybody should be able to have an opinion. The BBC do not put both sides. Fact.
And, unfortunately, if I want to listen to the enemy or read the enemy, and I'm talking about in political terms,
sure,
of course,
yeah,
I know exactly where to go,
yeah,
to what list presenters to listen to,
yeah,
or what paper to pick up.
Yeah.
And they make no secret of their allegiances.
Of course they don't.
And that's fine. And I do sometimes because I want to know what the enemy's thinking.
Absolutely.
So I go and have a listen. Probably to have a laugh, probably to listen to some very unhinged people spouting absolute cobblers, but it gives me a window into what those of a political persuasion different to mine is thinking. We should not go to the BBC for that. The BBC should be impartial, and yet time and time again it has fundamentally failed on that front.
This is really interesting. Deborah Tenness, who was the CEO, the head of news, on her way into the BBC yesterday, not even, no contrition at all. The BBC, she said, is not institutionally biased. This is Deborah Tenness yesterday.
I would like to say it has been the privilege of my career to serve as the CEO of BBC News and to work with our brilliant team of journalists. I stepped down over the weekend because the buck stops with me. But I'd like to make one thing very clear. BBC News is not institutionally biased. That's why it's the world's most trusted news provider.
But that's why you stepped down, because it was proven that you'd edited a speech by Donald Trump because you are institutionally biased, which is why you stepped down, you duplicitous witch.
Would they splice a speech of the King to give it a false representation, or the Queen, or the Prince or Princess of Wales?
You know what I'm going to say to you? And I'm being completely serious. I know I joked with the Tory Andrew Griffiths on the round yesterday, said to me on the BBC later, he went, yeah, I went, be careful. Do we know who they splice, who they edit? You're absolutely right what you said just now. If you want to get a left view, you read The Guardian, you go to certain things. If you want to get a right view, you probably go to The Telegraph or whatever. You know what happens here, you know what happens at other stations. The BBC, I think, their job is to try and be all things to all people. But if you look what they did to Cliff Richard. They utterly destroyed Cliff Richard's career. Look how long they shielded Jimmy Savile. Do you remember the abhorrence that Boris Johnson was treated when he dared to stand up in the Commons and say, Starmer, you were the Director of Public Prosecutions. You did nothing about the BBC and Starmer. And they all went, oh, this is outrageous. No, it's not. They have been, I think, biased and not impartial for years, and I believe that this is a really seminal moment. But of course, you know, again, front of the Mail, Trump tells the BBC grovel, I love him, or I'll sue you for $1 billion. It's all going to be about Trump. It needs to be looked at differently than that, in my humble.
Impartiality is not easy.
No.
I'll grant them that. It takes discipline, and it takes a particular mindset of people who are employed and leave their politics in the locker. That takes discipline.
But that's the charter, that's your job, that's what you have to do.
Exactly. Police officers have to do that. Yep. I know it's not a broadcasting thing, but you have to leave any kind of bias that you have in the locker. When you pull on that hat and you go out, everything, your own views, your personal opinions on things, on politics, on race, on religion, you leave it in the locker. Completely. And that is what the BBC, if it is to save itself, needs to reconnect with, leaving it in the locker.
Really interesting as well. Lots of the, I mean, I'm going to play an idiot in a minute. Lots of politicians, led by Nigel Farage, who was on the show yesterday, Richard Tice as well, Andrew Griffiths and Kemi Badenoch as well, were all saying, look, this is yes, a seminal moment, but it's your last chance. The BBC is still, in terms of the BBC World Service, revered in parts of the world, but there is this disconnect, which is, look at traitors, look at the sport. The Lionesses was on the BBC, was watched by 12.2 million people. Look at, you know, Strictly Come Dancing. But that side that works is undermined, I think, massively by their news output, which is heavily biased and woke and liberal/lefty. And yet that whole thing is paid for by the licence fee. There is not a news outputted station, Pete, in the world that can be financed by advertising or sponsorship or anything, and that's what impartiality is about. I believe the BBC should be broken up. I believe that I don't believe that the licence fee works. I think there should be a level playing field where people who love traitors, who love the Lionesses, who love the sport, buy that like they do everywhere else. As for the BBC, the news output, why would I want to contribute to that when it blatantly, whether I agree or disagree with their politics, they waste so much money and so much time, I think, just not concentrating on the things that matter.
As a bit of an aside,
yes,
if the BBC were to have a sports subscription channel, hardly anybody would pay their money for it, because the BBC have sold off virtually all the crown jewels of sport that they used to have, like Test match cricket and Premiership football and the such like, other than highlights. So I don't think that would be very cost effective in the slightest. We can't have this conversation without mentioning BBC Arabic, of course, which has come in for so much criticism because of what many people perceive as an unvarnished bias, an obvious bias. And so it goes.
BBC verify billions, well, millions, to set up to look at themselves. I mean, extraordinary waste of money. Loads of response already. Sean in Gloucester, good morning, gang. He says, I'm 100% behind Trump suing the BBC. They have deliberately fabricated a downright lie, and it's not the only time. Scrap the licence fee and make them compete on the open market and watch them close down because nobody likes them. Talk, oh no, poor BBC. It's had the Starmer curse of backing. Louis in York says he reckons the BBC will be gone in 48 hours. That usually happens if Stalin backs you. Bonjour, Jez. Shane from a gloomy, dark Bournemouth. The TV licence fee should be abolished. Hardly anyone watches the BBC now, and it's just their way of strong-arming money from the public for their own gratifications. Interesting. Tim says, why is the BBC acting like the victim, Jez, when the real victims are the people of Britain who pay money to be subjected to lies? And in North Yorkshire, Jackie, good morning to you. She says, talking about the BBC, just imagine for a minute, tell Pete this, she says, that some news stations had done this the opposite way round on Donald Trump. Imagine for a minute that the video clip was the other way round, that Donald Trump was an unhinged man that wanted American citizens to fight like hell. But to put him in a better light, it was doctored to show him wanting a peaceful protest. I bet that news station would be shut down.
Very good point.
I mean, it is so biased, and it is not... It is. I mean, a lot of people were yesterday saying, you know, it's really, you're just digging at the BBC. No, I think it goes much deeper than that. And the Times today, the BBC's coverage of the US presidential election was found to be markedly anti-Trump and pro-Hamas. Oh, no, pro-Harris. I did that deliberately. In an internal review by a senior BBC editorial advisor. I mean, so much of what they do. But, ladies and gentlemen, let's not fear. One of the most effective politicians ever to grace our screens and our radios, a man who won 72 seats in the last election with a diverse and forward-thinking array of policies. Sorry, no, actually, he used to put on a wetsuit and jump into pools of water, and he somehow managed. This is Ed Davey proving yet again that the Liberal Democrat leader is barking bloody mad.
The BBC News is the most trusted news source in the world, and we should be really proud of it. It's typical of British values. Of course, there's the odd mistake they make. I have to say, Donald Trump makes many, many more, as does Nigel Farage. And so the fact that Nigel Farage is basically teaming up with President Trump to criticise the BBC is shocking. It's unpatriotic, it's wrong, and it shows that he wants Trump's America, with his attacks on free media, coming to the UK.
The odd mistake, Peter Bleksley.
Tell me what part of wanting a state broadcaster to tell the truth is unpatriotic? How is that unpatriotic?
It's not.
It's the very essence of patriotism, that you want the state broadcaster to tell the truth, be impartial, and be renowned around the world. That's patriotism.
Yeah.
Not unpatriotic. Honestly, Ed Davey, really. Whoosh, splash, stick to that.
Honestly, and again, just picking up on what he said, apart from actually, we've had the odd mistake. What, allowing a paedophile to destroy people's lives? The main newsreader being allowed to get away with pensionable amounts of money? Allowing Bob Villan, the anti-Semite, to be on your station? Allowing Honestly, does the rug go on? I could go on and on. What planet is Ed Davey on? What bleeding planet is it? How did anybody give him 72 seats?
He's not on the planet that I occupy, I'm pleased to say.
But he is also, which is what I wanted to say this morning, he's also, for me, the concern, because all the detractors will say, this is just Trump having a go at the BBC, and I will forever sit here and say it is much more to that. Later on, by the way, we've discovered that Tim Davie is holding, what do they call it, like an open forum. He's basically, it's like an online meeting for every single member of the BBC to explain how he's going, why he feels he should go, blah, blah, blah. I don't know when that is, but I'm pretty sure somebody's going to be inside there with a mobile phone, and we'll have that on Talk later on. Your thoughts this morning, please, on the BBC. Don't we love them? Not. 0344 499 1000, your telephone number for your voice notes and your calls, and 87222. Start your messages with the word talk. I'm going to go to a break, but to calm Blexley down. We're back in 3.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:25, Tuesday morning, the 11th of November. An important day for all of us. Armistice Day, of course. The agreement that ended the First World War between the Allies and Germany, forever known. The people that put their lives on the line for us. We go on about this the whole time. I thought it was interesting yesterday to hear from so many of you about how Remembrance Sunday had been massively popular this year, that far more people were out showing their respects to the fallen heroes of yesteryear. Interesting when you consider the debate about flags and all of that. Doom and gloom, yes, right? And you look at, I mean, there was that terrible interview with Alex Penstone, that 100-year-old veteran yesterday, saying, why did so many of my brothers give their lives up when I look at this country? Just a little side thought for Armistice Day. What is still great about Great Britain? We'd love to hear from you. What is still great about Great Britain? 8722. Start your message with the word talk. PB, what's great about Great Britain still?
The red poppy. And I've seen so many people wearing them this year. It's been an absolute source of huge pride for me. I'm on red alert for it because I am at this time of year and I like to see people wearing them. And so when I'm travelling on the tubes and on trains and all of that, I've seen a significant number of people wearing them. Not because it's some kind of allegiance, not because it's some kind of showing off kind of thing, but people part with their hard-earned money to benefit veterans who have volunteered and sometimes sacrificed everything for our nation, and we wear it as a symbol of gratitude and pride, and that's what's great about Britain.
Thank you. Yeah, great words. I completely agree. 8722. Start your message with the word talk. What, my friends, is still great about Great Britain? Back to the BBC. Yesterday, Samir Shah, the chairman, slightly humiliatingly had to apologise. Civil war, we know, is erupting. Does Deborah Turness's assistant or deputy head of news, Jonathan Munro, does he survive? Does Samir Shah survive? How high does this go? What about the board? For me, the BBC is going to have to reinvent itself. This was its chairman yesterday admitting it doctored Trump's speech.
The apologising is for the way the team edited President Trump's speech to his supporters on January the 6th.
It was a mistake, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
A mistake? The chairman of the BBC. Deliberately doctoring the speech of a participant in the presidential election. Here's something I said earlier to the team, and I don't know the answer to this. I don't know if we can find this out. This was a speech that was rehashed, recut, re-edited markedly by the BBC in 2024 when Donald Trump stood to be the 47th president of the United States. I'm asking a question this morning. Was that speech also doctored by the BBC in 2021 after he lost the election to Biden? Do we know if it was doctored at that point? Be interesting to find that out. But there's no doubt you could look at that and go, you were trying to influence voting patterns.
There is no mistake about it. It was a deliberate, egregious act of dishonesty.
Completely
it was
agree.
Dishonesty, not a mistake.
Talking about dishonesty, I thought yesterday, come on, Starmer, you can stand up to the plate. No. Page 8 of the Mail, Sir Dreary Starmer, showing himself to be what he always is, a bit of a lame duck. PM ducks the demand to ditch the licence fee. He'll be sat in number 10 Downing Street trying to work out whether people's opinions in this country outweigh what focus groups tell him his own party might or not be thinking. But the truth is that he said the BBC via a spokesman is stronger than ever. Well, It's not, is it, Starmy? I mean, it isn't. It isn't stronger than ever. It's on its knees.
And he probably said this from Brazil, didn't he? Is he still out there?
Is he
still in Brazil?
I don't know if I don't know if they finished tearing the rainforest down so they can make way for their gas-guzzling jets. No, apparently he's back from COP30.
Is he really?
Yes, he is, yes.
Well, we might get to see him in the UK.
No, don't be so... No.
Never here.
Good morning to Slim from Burnley. Been on the Madeira, obviously. Good morning, Jez. Notice Ed Davey got in his usual dig about Farage. Just proves that Nigel is living rent-free in his head as well as Starmer's. Couldn't agree more. Adrian, a very good morning to you, sir. I reckon, he says, it needs to be made public what severance pay, what golden handshake and what pensions Tim Davey and Deborah Turness will receive from the publicly funded organisation. They, says Adrian, completely right here, resigned in disgrace for a litany of ill-judged decisions and ultimately for deliberately allowing lies to be broadcast. They deserve nothing. Pete, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jeremy. Well, if Keir Starmer's back in the BBC, well, we can just get rid of them both in one go, can't we? Get rid of the BBC, get rid of Starmer, and get rid of Labour. Also, this why are they trying to back the BBC? I'll tell you what, there'd be a bookie's dream down a bloody old horse racing track, wouldn't they? They'd be losing all the time. What a shower of you-know-what.
Brilliant. What a great start to Tuesday. And by the way, you couldn't go and have a bet because under this government they want to destroy betting shops and the whole betting industry, but more of that at another venture. Can we go to something... I mean, we've dealt with the BBC. You've let off a bit of steam. You're now going to see Peter Bleksley self-combust, I think, live on Talk. How do I do this? Today, it has been proven... You know this one-in, one-out migrant thing? Oh, God, calm down, man. This is the agreement with France.
Yes.
Page 17 of The Sun. A second hokey-cokey migrant has made his way back into Britain after being removed to France after the controversial one-in, one-out scheme. Basically, we sent him a few weeks ago, and on Remembrance Sunday, whilst we were wearing our poppies and remembering the fallen, he slipped back into Britain in a dinghy for the second time. Again, Downing Street insisted the detection of a second one-in, one-out migrant returned to the UK showed that the system was working. We're back there again. What planet is Starmer on? It shows, by the way, we deport somebody, they're back days later, and according to Starmer's spokesman, that shows the system's working. Peter Bleksley, good morning.
Mr. Kyle,
yes,
that is not the illegal immigration story of today.
Oh.
Because let me tell you, between Thursday and Sunday, yesterday's figures are not available yet, and it did rain a lot, didn't it? And the wind blew a little bit.
Be nasty, wouldn't it?
The sum total across those 4 days, Thursday to Sunday, 2,121 illegal migrants entered the UK via 30 dinghies. And let me just read something from the government website for absolute clarity here, so there can be no confusion whatsoever. Under the title, What We Do. This is what your government, our government, claims.
My government?
Our government.
OK.
The first duty of the government is to keep citizens safe and the country secure. The Home Office plays a fundamental role in the security and economic prosperity of the UK. Right. Where exactly in that pledge, in that statement, in that mission statement, does allowing 2,121 illegal migrants, of whom we don't know the background, we don't know the intentions.
We know nothing.
We know nothing about them.
Nothing.
How does that fit with the statement I just read out?
It certainly doesn't. But you know, you made me look a bit of a git by saying that 2,121 migrants have been let in across the 4 days, and you basically completely superseded the story I was given. I'm going to supersede you now. Do you know the Daily Breakdown?
Go on.
I do. 621 on Thursday, 648 on Friday, 503 on Saturday, and 349 on Sunday, Blake.
Yeah.
So put that in your pipe.
Yeah. Well, I just added those up, you see, which is why I came at 2,121.
Fact's
simple
right, though,
mathematics.
Fact is absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean, the again, almost, I feel like it's almost like the BBC, rather mirrors this government, the contempt with which Starmer and his ministers treat so many of us by saying, you know, we've got this agreement with France, so we're giving £500 million a year to, are doing absolutely nothing to stop the boats. But we've got a really good idea, having trashed Rwanda and everything that came before. When we give one in, we're going to give one out, and it has patently failed. And it is. I mean, I think it's a source of national embarrassment, but then, I mean, that's why I brought up the armistice thing, because if I look at the post office or the infected blood scandal, or I look at the NHS, or I look at the tax situation, I look at this government's ability to make us be humiliated abroad, I think about the child rape gang inquiries, I think about almost everything, the state of our prisons, the state of our judiciary, and people tell me this is Great Britain. I want on Armistice Day to go, what's great? But when you read this, you just think, this bunch of incompetent idiots are dragging us so far down.
But it goes beyond the word that you just used, embarrassment. This is endangering people.
Yeah, I agree.
It's why I read out that statement, and I adopt a very sombre tone when I say this. Look at the illegal migrants that in recent weeks have been convicted of murder. OK? Let's not forget, Rhiannon White. Let's not forget Govinda Johal. Let's not forget people that are being murdered and sexually assaulted, and many more crimes being committed against British people by some of these people who are coming in. And nothing is being done to stop them. Don't give me stop the boats. Don't give me smash the gangs, because 2,121 in 4 days. And the only reason that number isn't bigger across preceding days has been because of the weather. The only thing that protects these shores from these people is Mother Nature, not our government.
Don't shout at me. I'm quite scared of him. I completely agree. And actually, I'd go a stage further and say to you that you know, the sort of lies that are perpetrated, right? We know that these men, and they are majority of men before people jump up and down. They drop their passports 12 miles out. They come from a war-torn country. It's not a war-torn country in France. They don't like a tent. They want a hotel. They're unvetted. They arrive in the United Kingdom. You're absolutely right about the security risk. You're also absolutely right when you say that sheer number of people coming puts huge pressure on public services, and the British public are going, hold on a minute, we're paying for this and we're getting nothing. I saw some commentator, you said at the beginning of this hour that if you want to get, the other view, you read The Guardian or you listen to things. And I saw one of these female women's campaigners who, the story was the Bournemouth story, the man who basically sexually assaulted a girl about a year ago and was brought to court about a month ago, and the judge said this is because he had a very, very hard upbringing and it's a mere aberration. And I went absolutely nuts. And somebody responded, one of those do-gooders, who says it's very easy, you see, for people like Kyle and Talk to criticise illegal migrants, but British white men also sexually assault girls. And I remember thinking, that any form of sexual assault is utterly, utterly wrong. But you cannot possibly expect people with a brain cell in their heads to not go, unvetted men who come from a different culture, who perhaps, and this is the really interesting thing for women, have no respect for women, where misogyny is through the roof, come to a different culture and think it's okay. If those people were vetted, talked to, I don't know, they wouldn't be allowed in, or they'd know how to behave. But she wasn't having that. She wasn't talking about the girl that was a victim. She wanted it known that it's easy for people like you and me to say it's the migrants who are all the sexual assaulters and the rapists. And I just want to make that point.
I've got a couple of things that I'd like to say to that woman, and all of that ilk, all those unhinged lunatic people. And of course, people won't like this, and it's why I don't get invited to certain places and to speak to particular people. Fine by me. Do you know what? If we talk about British values, OK, British values amongst the imprisoned classes was that sex offenders got a blooming hard time. And you know why? Because what they did was deemed unacceptable. Unacceptable by their fellow prison population. OK? I know it's kind of like picking the best of a bad bunch, but that's how it was. Sex offenders were not accepted. Their behaviour, their criminality was not accepted amongst the wider jail population. And another point I would point out to such a woman is that the modern policing model was established some decades ago, and it was established in the numbers that it was and in the structure that it had to deal with our own garbage, our own rubbish people. That's why the numbers were they were at, so that it was sufficient to maintain law and order. Now, with so many foreign offenders coming into the country, the policing model is being shown to be creaking at the sides, unfit for purpose in many regards, because it's simply not big enough.
Couldn't agree more. He's really wound up this morning. 20 to 7. Coming back, he's going to get even more wound up, because apparently Prevent, that wonderful organisation, is no longer... God, he's gone. Is no longer keeping Britain safe. Could you please, Peter Brexley, say good morning to Patrick Joseph? He's an Uber driver who brought our very own Vanessa in today, and apparently he's a massive, massive fan of the station that is being listened to by more people than ever before. Fact.
Patrick Joseph, may you have passengers in the back of your car all day long.
0344 499 1000 for your voice notes and your calls on 87222. Get your brains working. On the day, the 11th of November is Armistice Day, the day the Allies and Germany signed that agreement to end the First World War. Actually, my late mother's birthday. What is still great about Great Britain? 87222. Start your message with the word talk. We'll head to a break. Kit, is it Kitty or Kit? Hello? Kitty, I only got... Oh, there you go. Kitty, good morning.
Just regarding the BBC, some of the programmes you mentioned, like Strictly Come Dancing, and then others, when people try to support the BBC, they say EastEnders and Doctor Who. These are decades-old formats and shows, and they've all gone woke, by the way. So there's nothing to be applauded there. And things like Traitors, I think the programme makers are to be applauded for that, and that people who devised it, that won't have been the BBC. And, you know, they should be doing good programmes. So just doing one or two that you can name, that, for me, they don't get any accolades for that. BBC needs to go. If it is so wonderful, as the likes of Esther Ranson, etc., have always said, then people will subscribe to it. But the reality is people won't subscribe to it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Morning Glory is on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense, where the nation comes to talk. 6:45, Tuesday, the 11th of November, Armistice Day, as I said before the break. What still is great about Great Britain, my friends? 87222. Start your message with the word talk. It's all doom and gloom. We just thought this morning, on such an important day for our forefathers and but the people who put us where we are today, what is still great about this country? People struggling. You wake up to the news on the front of the Sun and every other newspaper that Donald Trump has demanded a full apology from the BBC by Friday, or he could well sue the corporation for £1 billion. Of course, all the detractors, the Nick Robinsons, the Tim Davies, all those do-gooders are going, it's just Donald Trump trying to bring us down. They seem to forget about all the things that have been wrong about the BBC for so long, you know. Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Bob Villan, the Gaza documentary, the Diana interview, even Strictly needing chaperones. It's not just the one thing, it's loads of stuff, right? The BBC, open warfare today, the chairman apologising yesterday. Lots of you coming on and going, do you know what, I don't think the licence fee's right. I think it should be a level playing field. Keir Starmer proving that he is just the voice of the nation again by releasing a very short statement last night via his spokesman saying the BBC was stronger than ever. He really isn't at the races. Also, today, you might have heard the one-in, one-out migrant answer cultivated by the Labour Party is, in fact, falling on its arse, not surprisingly. The latest person that was sent back came back in again about 4 days later. But we're going to give him £500 to make himself feel better. Now, Peter Bleksley, I want you to stay as calm as possible, OK? Rachel Thieves, Richard III, the woman who can't add up, has hinted that she will indeed... we'll sort of scrap this two-child benefit cap, which is, for people who don't understand this, in this country, it's capped. You have 2 children, after which, you know, you need to pay for your kids. I think that's perfectly justifiable. And on the eve of us all knowing that she's about to break her manifesto and introduce income tax raids on all of us, and by the way, not the rich people, the working people the Labour Party purports to support, she's hinted she'll scrap the two-child benefit. So, what is it, £17.25 for an additional child, £26 just over for the first 2. So you can just carry on having kids. Sorry if this isn't popular, but this is my opinion. You can carry on having kids and the state will pay for it. But if you go to work and decide that you can't afford to have children yourself, you're going to be taxed more. And before people text me and go, oh, it's all right for you, Carl, you've got 6 kids. Yes, and I bloody well paid for every one of them. What are your thoughts on this, Pete?
I think this is a way of encouraging the reckless and the feckless. And those who say, I know my rights but don't know their responsibilities, to lay on their backs and have more children.
To the point?
I have 3, as you know, 3 sons, which of course I have paid for. I think, call me old-fashioned, I think have as many children as you can afford. I know it's a bit of an old-fashioned kind of statement, you know what I mean?
You're getting old. This is Rachel Thieves. This is her on the child benefit cap hint. You try saying that.
But I don't think we can lose sight as well of the costs to our economy in allowing child poverty to go unchecked. And in the end, a child should not be penalised because their parents don't have very much money. Lots and lots of different reasons why families change shape and size over time. And I don't think that it's right that a child is penalised because they are in a bigger family through no fault of their own.
At the risk of actually myself imploding at 10 to 7, a child shouldn't be penalised. Child poverty, Rachel, absolutely. But if these people cannot afford to have these children, why should the rest of society, who are struggling with energy, with food, with everything that they are struggling with, make that right? Now, I understand the argument of, I want to have a family, but answer to the hard-working people, Reeves. Answer to the people who pay their bills, their mortgages, and they are struggling. They haven't been on holiday. They're really, really struggling, and they will go, hold on a minute, this is incentivising people, as Peter Bleksley said, to have kids, excuse the pun, willy-nilly, isn't it? Can I, by the way, I've got to do this, it's 10 to 7. Do you want to see the latest Conservative montage on Rachel Reeves?
Oh, if I must.
Oh, come on, sell it to me. Say yes, please, Jez.
Oh, yes, please, Jeremy, that would be wonderful. Make my day.
Good, play it.
Labour will not put up your income tax, national insurance or VAT. We are having to look at taxes.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
There is a question of trust, isn't it? What is the point of a manifesto if it doesn't last a day beyond you being elected into office?
Will your promise not to raise rates on income tax, VAT or employees' national insurance hold good for the whole of this Parliament?
Yes, absolutely. It's an absolute commitment. We've now wiped the slate clean. It's now on us. It's now on us.
It would, of course, be possible to stick with the manifesto commitments, but that would require things like deep cuts in capital spending.
That means taxes are going up again, doesn't it?
Well, I'll deliver the budget in a couple of weeks' time. I have been really clear that we are looking at both taxes and spending as part of this budget.
You've made clear that that manifesto promise is going to be broken.
It's now on us. It's now on us.
Just one thing, which Mark, top button pusher in the world, just made the point. Look at her eyes. She doesn't actually believe herself what she's saying. It's all shifty, isn't it? It's all a bit like that.
These people run the country. No wonder.
Yes.
We're going down the pan. I mean, really, is that the most capable person?
Apparently.
The greatest orator,
She's
the
not
most
an orator.
capable, engaging, charismatic person that the Labour Party can find to run the country's finances.
OK. Listen, I don't even want to talk about the next bit because we're coming back to talk about crime in this country. You're going to be all right. We're going to have to wheel him out at 7 o'clock. This is Talk Breakfast. A very good morning to you.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 5 to 7, news on the way. Just very quickly, Armistice Day, we asked you what is still great about Great Britain. Was this... Fiamma, I hope I got that right, in Surrey. Great show. Love Pete. What's still great about Britain? Our sense of fair play, generosity to those worse off than ourselves, our sense of humour, our creativity and our innovation. It's still all there, if only we believed it. Morning, Pete. Morning, Jez. The thing that I think makes this country great is the fact that a lot of us still believe in patriotism, belief and resilience. Pete, see you in April. Sharon from Staffordshire is very angry. Reeves, you thief, why the hell should I be working to pay for other people's children? No, it's your bloody children. You look after them, not expecting taxpayers to do it. You've right wound me up this morning, Rachel Thief, says that lady. Sharon in Staffordshire. Pete, you've got 4 minutes. I want you to stay calm. This morning, front page of the Telegraph. Prevent the counter-terrorism scheme even is no longer keeping the country safe. A shocking report reveals today. Your response, Peter Blexley?
It took 3 years to compile this report, so I think we can safely say it was pretty thorough. It was carried out by the Independent Commission on Counter-Terrorism, and it says that this Prevent programme needs a radical overhaul. Of course, there is one revolting, disgusting name, please forgive me, viewers and listeners, that I'm going to have to mention because it features prominently in the report. That is Axel Rudabakana, because, of course, he was referred to the Prevent programme 3 times. And part of the reason that he went on to commit his atrocities is because they found no apparent ideology. And apparently the whole Prevent programme is getting very much hung up on this, that a person that's referred to him has to show some kind of ideology, as opposed to just being a wrong-un. Just being a wrong-un doesn't qualify.
Can't call somebody a wrong-un anymore, can you? It's disrespectful. No. Stop doing your impression of the Sweeney. Also in the Telegraph, page 8, record numbers of violent and sex offenders have absconded or broken the terms of their temporary release from prison. Official figures. I mean, this is on the back of Wandsworth, where you could just walk out the front door for a wedding or whatever. We've now got record numbers of violent and sexual criminals absconding. Is this country seriously in the Kazi?
Yeah, we've got 321 of them in the last year. Okay. Either failed to return back to jail after getting a maybe home release for the weekend or something like that. They returned late, or they breached the term of their licence. In other words, went on to commit other offences, I would suggest. It's all part of lawless Britain, but I rewind to that statement that I read out from the government not so long ago about their fundamental responsibility to keep us safe.
Yep.
You know, it's part of the social contract. You keep us safe, and in return, we'll go to work, pay our taxes, abide by the law, raise decent children, and be contributing members to society. That's the social contract. They're not keeping us safe. The government are fundamentally failing in their #1 pledge to us, the electorate, and our children.
I couldn't agree more. I feel I'm very energised and slightly knackered after that. Peter Blexley, you are my Tuesday morning salvation. Thank you so much indeed. So you're waking up to the following stories. Donald Trump has demanded a full and frank apology from the BBC, or he'll sue for £1 billion. A second migrant, you know, the one in, one out thing that's sort of become 1 out, 57,000 in, 2,121 in the last 4 days, has absconded. Well, he's come back to England on a boat, having been sent away, so we'll be looking after that. And Rachel Reeves, this has really got you going, has hinted she will scrap the 2-child benefit cap. Many of you raging and saying, hold on a minute, I've got to go to work, I can't afford to have kids, and yet people that affect this can just procreate, and before you start on me, I pay for my kids. Later in the show as well. Excited about this. The business guru, yesterday announced by Nigel Farage at the Small Business Conference held by Reform, exclusively here on Talk. It's almost 7 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is where the nation comes to talk. If you want to be part of it, 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. We'll do all of that. And we've got James Hill kicking off the next hour after the news at 7, which is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the 11th of November. It is Armistice Day across the world. This is the day, of course, that the Allies and Germany signed an agreement to end the First World War, on a day that is so important, actually, in our history and so important to so many. We were talking yesterday on the show about how the Remembrance Sunday attendees numbers were just through the roof, and I think that says an awful lot for how many patriots there are in this country and how many people worry about where this country's going to. We decided, listen, there's a lot of doom and gloom. What do you reckon still makes Britain great? Amongst all the misery that we'll no doubt be talking about, what is still great about your country? I'd love to hear from you this morning. 8722. Start your message with the word talk. I mean, where do you start? You start with the front of the Sun newspaper. Astonishing article by Jack Elsom. He'll be here in an hour. Beeb's $1 billion bungle. We know, if we've been anywhere, listening to anybody or watching anything, that the BBC is in utter turmoil. Sunday night, Tim Davie, the Director General, and the Head of News, Deborah Turness even, were forced to resign after this admission that they'd edited and doctored a Trump speech ahead of the 2024 presidential election. He has absolutely gone ballistic overnight, the Donald. He says, I demand a full apology by Friday or I'm going to sue you for £1 billion. Meanwhile, Starmer, he's bunkered down in number 10. He's saying, you know, useful things like the BBC is stronger than ever. It's not, you idiot. It's under complete, well, it's just attack. And I think it's right. People are questioning whether the licence fee is acceptable, whether the landscape is a free, you know, playing field. And most of all, how can our national broadcaster, that's supposed to be, you know, unbiased and straight down the line, be so institutionally biased? It's really interesting. All the Beeb lot have come out and gone, it's outrageous. We'll be speaking to somebody this hour who's going to defend the BBC and tell me that it's one of the greatest institutions in the world. That'll be fun. You're also waking up to the news that the one-in, one-out scheme is a patent failure. A man was, well, he was sent away about a week ago. He came back on Remembrance Sunday in a boat. We'll be giving him £500 to no doubt leave again. This helter-skelter mess is something that just is not working. It's an outrage. And probably what's got you most of all this morning, Rachel Thieves has hinted that she will scrap the two-child benefit cap, meaning, and I don't say this with any pleasure because I paid for my kids, yes, everybody should, if they want, be able to have kids. But surely we should be at a point where we're saying, in this climate, with how many people are struggling, you should be able to pay or afford your own kids. If you're saying to a society, have 3, 4, 5, 6, and we'll dole out the money whilst cutting public services, increasing people's taxes, people will rightly go, this isn't fair. Your thoughts on all of that this morning, please. 0344 499 1000. Starting with the BBC, that politician, you know, the one that liked Lycra, has got no policies and somehow ended up with 72 MPs. Ed Davey, he's slightly deranged. This is what Ed Davey, this is what we're dealing with, said about the BBC yesterday. Have a watch.
I think the BBC News is the most trusted news source in the world, and we should be really proud of it. It's typical of British values. Of course, there's the odd mistake they make. I have to say, Donald Trump makes many, many more, as does Nigel Farage. And so the fact that Nigel Farage is basically teaming up with President Trump to criticise the BBC is shocking. It's unpatriotic, it's wrong, and it shows that he wants Trump's America, with his attacks on free media, coming to the UK.
Nigel Farage does live rent-free, doesn't he, in Ed Davey's head and Donald Trump. Nigel Farage was on this show yesterday. This is his take on the disaster that is the BBC.
I'm going to defund the BBC from its current model, be in no doubt about that. The BBC, under our plans, would be slimmed down to something very relatively small, but most of it would move to a subscription model to compete in the open market. You know, do I want it to have a basic role for news and current affairs? Yes, but it's going to have to be very, very different to the way it is now.
0344 499 1000. Where do you stand on the BBC? Sean, good morning.
You have to understand about Ed Davey is that Ed Davey thinks women can have a penis, so he agrees with the BBC, right? on all this stuff. He thinks Trump's a fascist, so he agrees with the BBC. These people who keep defending the BBC don't think they've done nothing wrong because they agree with them.
I'm a bit outspoken and outrageous about the whole women and penises thing. I might as well nail it right here. I remember, you know, the old-fashioned women's, the ones that had wombs. There you go. We'll say a very good morning to James Heal. James Heal, of course, Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. How are you, dear boy?
I'm very good, thank you, Jeremy.
The BBC argument continues and shows no sign of abating. And I just want to start differently with you this hour, James. They'll make it all about Donald Trump suing the corporation for a billion, what is it, 760 million quid. But essentially, the deep-rooted problems of the BBC, Savile, Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, I'm going to keep naming them whenever we talk about this, the Hamas documentary voiced by a Hamas high-ranking official's son. Where do we go? Martine Croxall, the newsreader who dared to change pregnant people to pregnant women. The list goes on. I think it would be a real shame in all of this, James, if people like Ed Davey were allowed to get off the hook by simply saying, this is Trump trying to control the British mainstream media. The truth of the matter is, and I don't know your thoughts on this, but I believe that your national broadcaster should be unbiased and straight down the line. And it is not, is it?
No, and I think that it's a lot of people trying to see this through their own different political lens. And so the Liberal Democrats, of course, clearly think that they can use this to bash Nigel Farage and Donald Trump, appeal to their support base. And their logic for doing so is that, well, this was something Trump was not happy about, therefore if it makes Trump unhappy, it must be a good thing. Actually, of course, two wrongs don't make a right. And I think you can perfectly say you don't have to be a fan of Donald Trump to recognise that there were poor editing going on here, poor journalism. But of course, for Ed Davey, he's looking for political ends. So I'm not surprised to see him jump on this. The Lib Dems are desperate to insert themselves in any culture war conversation. And a cynic might have to say, Jeremy, it means they have to come up with avoiding any real policy and instead get to talk about things which affect America many, many thousand miles away from us.
Couldn't agree more. And also, just an opinion, people can agree or disagree. Ed Davey, to me, who wants to become relevant almost on a daily basis, fails to answer the one thing that I think he should answer, which he was in charge of the Post Office as the Post Office Minister in the coalition back in the early 2014, and he has never had the pair big enough to confront one of the biggest disgraces in this country, and yet he pontificates every single day about stuff that I don't think he knows about. That's just my opinion. If you want to defend Ed Davey, love to hear from you. Yesterday, BBC Chair Samir Shah rightly apologising, and at the moment we seem to be entering sort of turmoil there, and everybody, as you said, is getting involved, including our very own Prime Minister, James, who, if you sit here like we do, the clamour to change, scrap, defund, whatever the BBC, the licence fee, is unparalleled, OK? So unswitched on is our Prime Minister that yesterday his spokesman said the BBC is stronger than ever. You're a political, you know that the stuff that goes. Does anybody in his inner circle look at what people are thinking or saying? Do they have any desire to have their finger on the pulse? Because it's extraordinary.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, Jeremy, the big event of this Parliament is going to be the renewal, in terms of broadcasting probably, the renewal of the BBC Charter in 2027. And we're now approaching those negotiations. And Tim Davey, ironically, was just saying a month ago that the BBC needs to enter those negotiations with a bit of swagger. And of course, not much swagger left at the corporation, I might suggest now. Look, I think this is the danger for the Prime Minister, is that when they approach those negotiations, I think you can have a hard-headed assessment of where the BBC is going. I thought it was interesting yesterday, Nigel Farage, that big press conference, talking about the fact that 500,000 people quit paying the licence fee last year, the same number as the year before it. I think there is an appetite there for some cultural grip and some cultural change. And yeah, as you say, lines like that, platitudinous nonsense, which even if you're the most ardent defender of the BBC, I just don't think you can actually agree with, I think show that the Prime Minister's, some of their key aides are frankly not thinking about this, not engaging with it, and really trying to get across that sense of change that this country's institutions so badly need.
I think that the highlight of this, the look at immigration, the concentration on public services and people's involvement and their opinions, is born out of how difficult it is for people right now. I think people have always sort of accepted we're generous, we're moralistic, we're leaders. But I keep saying this. I think as the belt gets tightened, I mean, I take, you know, people rightly are going, this isn't right. We are going to speak out. Let's take the other thing that's in the news today. Rachel Thieves, as I call her, Richard III, has hinted that she'll scrap the two-child benefit cap. Let's just watch this, James, quickly. This is Rachel Thieves on Talk.
I don't think we can lose sight as well of the costs to our economy in allowing child poverty to go unchecked. And in the end, a child should not be penalised because their parents don't have very much money. Lots and lots of different reasons why families change shape and size over time. And I don't think that it's right that a child is penalised because they are in a bigger family through no fault of their own.
I mean, James, I struggle with that. It might not be popular. I struggle with a woman who is a liar saying to the British public, I'm going to go against my manifesto and raise taxes, not just on the super wealthy, but on all of you. But at the same time, I'm going to say to people who can't afford to have children, keep procreating and the state will pick up the tab. Now, a lot of people will go, you can't say that, but I think that's a fair answer, don't you?
Well, I think this is a tale of two different manifesto promises, Jeremy. One of which, of course, was the promise to rule out any rise in income tax. We now think that that's going to go out. That was the totem pledge of that Labour manifesto last year. The other thing you've got to remember, of course, is that Keir Starmer and Richard Reeves were asked about the two-child benefit cap, and they ruled it out, saying it was unaffordable. Now, you're very entitled to ask, how on earth was it unaffordable last year, but now that the public finances are in a much worse state and you're going to break your income tax pledge, why on earth are we doing it now? The answer, of course, is internal Labour Party politics. We've just had a deputy leadership race where the number 10 candidate got trounced. Clearly, the Labour MPs are demanding this happen. And so you just have to think that for all those hopes that this Labour government would transform the economy, they seem to have given up already. And I'll just make one other point about the two-child benefit cap, of course, which is that it's going to apply to those who've been born here in recent years. I think it'll be interesting to see how many of those are from people who've arrived in the so-called Boris wave, migration post-2020, as opposed to, for instance, the ones that, say, Reform are proposing, which suggests that that two-child benefit cap would only be limited to British-born and British families. So I think that that's going to be a really interesting dimension, and it all leads to the spectacle of taxes going up next month for people who basically are seen as part of the Labour family rather than the whole nation as a whole.
I just think it's another example of the government not understanding, and I don't use this word lightly, how the indigenous population are feeling. As I say, I think there's just been a marked difference as to how willing the British public are prepared to continually be battered when it seems that other people, or people who don't put in, for want of a better phrase, are getting treated. Just one very quick, I've had a text before we let you go. The White House is apparently, going back to that first story, mulling a BBC reporter ban. Would the BBC care about that? Would that be a huge thing in your mind?
They would very much care about it, because I think they would consider themselves to be a hugely important network out there. The journalists certainly want their contacts, they want their access. I think that is something that we're working desperately behind the scenes to avoid. And this is why it's important to keep up your standards, not give any ammunition to your critics, because they're going to make the most of this. You've already seen the Pentagon ban of journalists, which the White House has done. I think the people care very, very much about that.
I think I'm going to ring up Donald and get him to ban the BBC and make my morning. James Hill, thank you so much indeed. Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, 7:15. You're with Morning Glory. This is where the nation comes to talk. We're delighted to say more than ever people are listening and calling. 0344 499 1000. Really appreciate it. Let's go to Essex. Come on, Eileen. Morning.
Morning. Hello.
You knew that was coming, didn't you? You did.
Oh, yeah, I've been hearing that for years. Yeah.
Come on, Eileen. Yeah, it's the dungarees I never fancied. It's this two-child cap benefit that's wound you up today, isn't it?
Like many people, I'm 65 and still working, Jeremy.
Gemini?
I'm a bit nervous.
So am I. I'm absolutely terrified. Let's do it together. Calm down, love. You'll be fine.
No, just paying for other people being irresponsible, and I don't feel that money will actually be going to help to get children out of poverty at all. It will probably be spent, not saying that's for everybody, but on other things.
I think it's a really good point. That the problem is, if you have that opinion, like I've given 20 minutes ago, lots of people will say you're denying people the chance to have kids. No, I'm not. But there has to be a line, surely, between what was it Rachel Reeves said, penalising children born into poverty. Well, you have to look at the parents and go, if you knew that was going to be the situation, did you deliberately do that to take advantage, or do you not care about how you bring your child up? And that, I think, is the debate. And I get your frustration, Eileen, I really do. I appreciate your call so much. Thank you. 0344 499 1000. This will excite you. After the break, we've got breaking news on unemployment. And surprise, surprise, doom and gloom continues, because it's not good news. We'll go to a break with Colin. Is it Col or Colin? Doesn't really matter. Col. I don't know what that's short for, Colin or Colander. Anyway, this is his thoughts on the child benefit cap. Back in 3.
Hi Jez, it's Colin Birmingham here. Just a quick one on the whole Rachel Reeves budget. I've just finished work. I'm on now to my second job for the day, which is my day job. I'll be back at my first job tonight, and it makes me question, if they lift this cap, I've got 3 children, what's the point in me working all hours God sends to put food on my table for my children, when I could drop that second job and have more money in my pocket than I do now? I mean, I've always worked, always will work. Just makes you wonder, doesn't it? And
fraction of the people that want to come in. They are queuing up to come in by these boats. Nobody has been remotely put off by one in, one out. They take their chances.
And of course, tough-talking, hard-line Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is just as useless as all the other Home Secretaries. She's now, she's called the Terminator. She'll sort this out. If you don't leave the ECHR, Shabs, no chance whatsoever. And she won't leave the ECHR, so forget about it.
the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you, my friends. Morning glory on the home of common sense. Talk is on between now and 10. It is, of course, Armistice Day, the 11th of November, back after the First World War. This was the day when the Allies and Germany brought an end to that conflict, signed that agreement, and it's a day that's become synonymous even with the British public remembering. We have Remembrance Sunday, and actually it was really heartening yesterday to hear how numbers have increased from people going to cenotaphs and local villages and towns and basically showing their respect. And it is all doom and gloom at the moment. I mean, look, here's some more. The rate of UK unemployment rose to 5% in the month September to August, up 0.02%. Fact is, unemployment's high, prices are high, gas is high, petrol's high, everything's high. We were just sort of saying for Armistice Day, is there anything great about this country that still inspires you? Mark in Birmingham, quite right. The wonderful counties, the wonderful countryside are some of the most iconic buildings in the United Kingdom. Mary says, not Rachel Reeves. You see, you just can't handle it, can you? So much to talk about this morning. The two-child benefit cap. They suggest, do they not, Rachel Thieves has hinted that she will scrap the two-child benefit cap. And this is one of those subjects that's really, really got you, right? So in this country, we pay £26.05 per week for your eldest or only child, and then £17 per week after that. And it's been capped. It basically says, right, sorry, but after that, if you can't afford to have kids, two should be enough. Don't penalise, in Rachel Reeves' own words, children by expecting the state to pay for them. She's going to scrap that. She thinks it would be a good idea to send a message that says, listen, have as many kids as you want, whilst also raising tax on hard-working, working-class people, by the way, not multi-millionaires, working-class people. And you're up in arms. Phil's in Coventry. Just wondering how many more people that are getting into our country are having more and more children not working and then claiming all sorts of benefits. We, our own working force, are going to have to have child benefit capped. It is disgraceful. Jim, even I, who is not at all paternal, accept a need to support the first one or two kids of decent parents. But the rest have had the pleasure of making them so they can pay for them. My grandfather, who fought at the Somme, had a saying, a land fit for heroes means you've got to be a bloody hero to live in it. Listen, it's absolutely true. Love your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Of course, you're waking up to the main news story, front of the Sun, Beeb's billion-dollar bungle. Sunday night saw the resignation of Director General Tim Davie and Head of News Deborah Turness. And to be fair, the BBC in meltdown. Yesterday, BBC Chair Samir Shah apologising that his news department saw fit to doctor Donald Trump's speech. Have we still got that? Because it's one of the most amazing pieces of footage. And I'm going to play it again. I haven't played it all morning. In 2024, before the presidential election that Trump won, the BBC saw fit to change what he'd said about the Capitol riots back in 2021. What you'll first see in here, and I'm sure you've seen it, but let's refresh our memory, is what Panorama played, after which you see what Trump actually said. Have a watch.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
Listen, credit where credit's due. To be honest, we spent most of last evening and most of the night trying to find anybody who would justify or support the BBC's current situation. So I'm delighted to say a very good morning to a former BBC producer, John Mayer. Welcome to Morning Glory, John. How are you?
Jeremy, good morning. Good morning. Hey, look, we're in the land of fantasy here now, aren't we? The land of fantasy and playground bullies. You know, Trump threatening to sue the BBC. You know, what is this all about? You know, the BBC should just tell him to sling his hook, because he does this to all the American networks. He sued them all for $1 billion and ended up accepting 15 million in some cases. You know, he's got PBS and NPR on its knees, absolutely on its knees. You know, Trump doesn't believe in opposition. He's a playground bully. So, you know, but why should we fall into line with him? look, the Director General has resigned. He's the fourth of the last five who's gone out in a coffin or been measured per coffin, and he's talking to the staff this morning about that. Poor man. I know him. He's a good man, and he's been a good DG. It's a shame. So, but was there a row last week? Are the BBC governors, have they been taken over by a right-wing cabal? Did they stop the Director of News actually apologising? Look, it's a simple, indefensible mistake. A mistake made by an independent company, a stupid mistake, which the BBC should have apologised 6 months ago when it was first pointed out. Not yesterday, not the day before, but it was 6 months ago. Just say, look, we're sorry, we made a mistake, we should never have transmitted this, we're very sorry. So, they allowed it to fester, so it's crazy. But, you've got to think, what's the BBC for? Do we want the BBC? It's 104 years old, the licence fee is up next year, then the charter's up the year after that. I've edited a book called Life After the Licence Fee. We need to think about the licence fee. What do we want? Do we want to pay 180 quid next year, or do we actually want to invent a new kind of licence fee where you have a basic licence fee and you have and you use the iPlayer as a way to subscription? Because this is an organisation which makes brilliant programmes and which can charge for them, and it should do.
Welcome to Morning Glory, John. If I could get a word in edgeways, my friend.
Of course you can.
Yeah, brilliant. Because your protestations are well noted, and I hope you will do me the credit of having my say in return, because you, for me, epitomise what's wrong with an organisation that still believes that the British people consider you to be an unbiased, straight down the line, institutionally unbiased organisation. However much you want to jump in, let me tell you, the majority of Great Britain do not feel that. And I'll tell you why. I said yesterday that the minute Trump did what Trump's going to do, and I'll take your point, that would deflect, because all the people like you and that dreadful Nick Robinson and all those people would jump up and down and say, this is Trump and his allies trying to control our mainstream media. This is disgusting. Let me tell you, I don't care about Trump suing you. I don't care if the government lent on Tim Davie and Deborah Turness. What people like you and your ilk will not understand or will not answer is this institution that is supposed to represent the British people have covered up, lied, cajoled and done whatever they can. This is not, by the way, just Donald Trump. This is Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace, that vile anti-Semite Bob Villan, where your DJ, by the way, DG, was actually at Glastonbury for 5 hours. Martin Croxall being done by BBC Verify for daring to say pregnant people, because in the world I live in, only a woman can get pregnant. This is your organisation who paid a Hamas official's son to voice a documentary to prove yet again of your anti-Jewish and Israeli approach. John, listen, you're a nice man, but the truth of the matter is the BBC's coverage of the US presidential election was found to be markedly anti-Trump and pro-Harris. An internal review, a senior BBC editorial advisor said yesterday. You can sit there and say the BBC does great programmes, but I can sit here and tell you that the majority of Great Britain consider it an overpriced, highly biased, woke waste of space. And the people in the BBC, unless you realise that and use this as a seminal moment, it won't survive, pal. It's not a level playing field. That's my take.
Jeremy, you stop ranting. Look, this is a brilliant organisation which last week got...
It's not.
Can I have my say, please?
Well, you haven't answered anything I've said, have you?
Last week, 12 million people watched the final of The Traitors. This is an organisation which produces 9,000 hours of
This is an organisation that doctored the speech of a political opponent from an ally across the water, and its head of news, Deborah Turness, who, by the way, will turn her fire on many execs, let me guarantee you that, strode into the building yesterday and saying, I'm proud of our journalistic output. How can you be proud when they doctored something? What?
Who cares what Donald Trump thinks about the BBC?
Right,
Donald
and
Trump
you've just summed up. But hold on, no.
Concentrate. Why doesn't Donald Trump concentrate invading Venezuela?
I will actually lower your microphone. You have just proven that yourself and people like you at the BBC, you just did it. You just said, who cares what Donald Trump thinks? That tells me that you and your ilk, no, hear me out, please, have decided that you don't like Donald Trump. I'm not sticking up for Donald Trump. What I'm saying is the BBC should allow the British people to decide what they think of Donald Trump without doctoring his speeches to make their own thoughts be pushed upon people. That's fair, John.
This is the British Broadcasting Corporation, not the Trump Broadcasting Corporation. I, by the way, don't work for them, haven't worked for them for decades. But well, why doesn't Trump concentrate on invading Venezuela or world peace? What's the BBC got to do with him? He is a bully and a thug, and we should not tolerate it.
But you haven't answered the question. You have successfully blamed an independent company for the mistakes of editing. That's absolutely... Well, you know what? Deborah Turness and her bosses should be over this.
They should have spotted it, yes.
I ask you this. I just made a point which you refused to answer. There is deep-seated views, whether they're anti-Trump, anti-Nigel Farage, anti-Brexit, anti-the window in my studio. The fact is it not the job of your national broadcaster, John? This is what I'd like you to answer me without starting on your Trump derangement, whatever you're going to go off about. Is it not the responsibility of your national broadcaster to put in front of the British people both sides of an argument, whatever that argument is, about the flag, about Armistice Day, about whatever it is? Isn't it up to the broadcaster to then say to the people, there are both sides of the argument, we live in a democracy, make your own mind up? That's the first question. Second question is, you have to admit the BBC hasn't done that repeatedly.
Look, the polling evidence doesn't back you up, Jeremy. People still trust the BBC, whatever you say.
No, they don't.
The BBC bends over backwards, to be fair to people. It bent over backwards on Brexit and other things. It bends over backwards.
It bent over backwards to look after Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace and Bob Villan, but it didn't bend over backwards to look after Martine Croxall when she dared to say pregnant women. Come on, John.
That was just stupid. I mean, and the Trump mistake was absolutely stupid. So look, this is a national broadcaster, 104 years old, which produces brilliant programmes, which is what they should do.
Are you programmed by the BBC yourself? Have you actually got a chip inside you that just keeps repeating the same stuff? Because it doesn't add up, John. It doesn't add up.
Jeremy, I've just edited a book called The BBC After the Licence Fee, which says, look, the BBC's got to look at life after the licence fee. It's not going to be there forever and a day.
No.
You have to think, and you have to think what's going to happen, and that's down to us, the British public, and the government. But
do you think the BBC licence fee? Do you think the licence fee can continue when you bear in mind that 25,551 people last year were prosecuted for non-payment? Those numbers continue to rise. Nigel Farage said yesterday on this show that the BBC needs to understand that it should play on a level playing field like everybody else. It should be defunded and it should stand on its own 2 feet. And before you jump in, what was your example, traitors? I add Strictly. I add your coverage of the Lionesses World Cup final, 12.2 million people trumping you. I know you don't like that word, but I would suggest that if you became a subscription service, John Mayer, your very good programmes would encourage people to pay for it. But I bet you any money, whatever you tell me, people would not pay to watch your news because your news is institutionally biased. Fact.
Keeps you honest, Jeremy. They keep you absolutely honest. Without the BBC, there wouldn't be room for things like Talk and things like GB News, because the BBC is straight down the line. There's room on the right for people like you, for people GB News, for Farage.
So, there's room for people like me, Farage and GB News on the right. You're doing it again. The BBC...
Well, you are right, aren't you?
How would you describe the BBC?
Straight down the line, too straight down the line. Sometimes.
You've got to be winding me up. Have you taken something overnight, man? What's wrong with you? What?
The BBC is institutionally fair.
It's institutionally biased. How can
That's
you
your view.
possibly... Right, so
your
explain to me how a senior BBC editorial advisor yesterday said that its coverage of the US presidential election was found to be markedly anti-Trump and pro-Harris. That's an internal review. Can you please stop spouting the same rubbish and explain that to me?
That was Michael Prescott, former political editor of Sunday Times, who said that. And the BBC should take account of that. And they should have taken account of it 6 months ago when he said it, instead of allowing it to...
What about allowing Bob Villan to shout death, death to the IDF? How did you feel about that? Was that acceptable straight down the line, was it?
That's a mistake.
Oh, it's another one. So we've got two, yeah? What about Martin Croxall? What about Martin Croxall saying pregnant woman and being censured for daring not to say pregnant people? Was that a mistake?
That's just stupid. That's just the BBC thought police being stupid.
Oh, right, so that's three of them. What about Hugh Edwards? Right, hear me out. I haven't finished. Hugh Edwards, who is still getting his pension, the pedo, and walking around. Why doesn't the BBC do everything in its power, hear me out, rather than, I don't know, internally reviewing Martin Croxall? Why don't you get the thought police at your institution to get the money back of the British taxpayers who are paying for that paedophile to walk around the United Kingdom? Can you explain that to me?
I agree. I agree.
So that's four things. So we basically agree. Brilliant.
You're on a roll, Jeremy. You're on a roll.
Yeah, so I'm not wrong. John, it's been an absolute pleasure. 4-0. Thank you very much indeed. Ex-BBC producer John Mayer. This is Talk Breakfast. Hello.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Yeah, the Queen of Westminster back at 10, as ever, 10 until 1, Monday to Thursday. Julia Hartley-Brewer, 20 minutes to 8. This is Morning Glory. I don't apologise for what I said to John Mayer, because at the end of the day, he agreed with the 4 examples I gave him. I think the BBC might have had a good reputation in the past. It does still make good programmes, as I said, but I believe fervently, right, it is time for a change. Your last guest, says Steve Chandler, Mad John, just said, who cares about Trump? That sums it up. They don't like him, so fake news is OK, and they don't like Farage. So unless things change, they will do exactly the same to Nigel Farage. I've never been able to trust them. Love your take on that this morning, 87222. Start your message with the word talk. I want to change tack. A horrible, horrible, horrible story that came out a couple of days ago was a woman, tragically 34, killed after being stabbed in the neck in an unprovoked attack at a bus stop in Birmingham. Miss Fox, I mean, it's just the most shocking story. You talk about unprovoked attacks. The woman was just going about her business and from nowhere was stabbed in the neck and died later in hospital. And it opened up a whole debate, quite rightly, I should say, about the safety of women. You sit and you do what we do, and you think there are certain things that people get wound up about, listening to the BBC try and justify itself, and then you look at what's going on the streets, what's actually happening. I'm delighted to be joined now by Orla Minihane, who's the lead organiser for Pink Ladies, of course, the ladies who were brave enough to go on the streets and talk about what's right for women and what's important about female safety. I think you were probably labelled far right, weren't you, by Starmer, but there we go.
Yes, I was.
Honest to God.
Hi, morning, Jeremy. Thank you for having me.
Always. Ola, this is a terrible story.
Yeah.
We have to be careful. Legally, this guy is being charged and it's an ongoing process. But
yeah,
this isn't a one-off, is it, tragically?
No. So I just want to say my absolute, heartfelt condolences to her family. 34 years old, starting out her life, minding her own business. And Katie Fox, if you read about some of the things on social media, seemed to be the most lovely woman, just a normal girl going around her business. But, let's not forget, Jeremy, that, and not to undermine Katie's death, but in the last 2 weeks, 2 other girls have been murdered in similar situations. Stephanie Irons, 23, murdered. Lily Whitehouse, 19, murdered. And these are women who were murdered on the street in cold blood, stabbed to death. Now, we also have the Rihanna White, which is slightly last year. But, these women are in their 20s, starting their lives off, and absolutely unprovoked attacks and savage attacks as well. Now, if you look back at Sarah Everard, another awful story, that was in 2001. But look at the coverage that there was for Sarah Everard. It was everywhere. There were vigils. It was on every news station. Yet these girls don't seem to be getting the kind of coverage that they should. So it's almost like we've either become immune to this or it's just not seen or deemed that important anymore because maybe it's happening so often, and I honestly believe, Jeremy, but this is the tip of the iceberg. I think you'll find that there are so many more that we are not hearing about, and that is absolutely terrifying for women, all women, but especially women who have got, young daughters, grandmothers who have got daughters who go out shopping, they go out to nightclubs, they go out to bars. I won't let my daughter go to school anymore on her own, and she's nearly 18, because I'm terrified that something will happen to her. Because most of these attacks are unprovoked, out of the blue.
And you're so right, Orla, when you say, how can we as a society ever normalise this? It should be called out so readily. Katie Fox, as you said, 34, walking through the Bullring, a place I know really well from my time in Birmingham, minding her own business, needlessly stabbed to death, gone. You're absolutely right. Rhiannon White, Sarah Everard. I remember doing the Sarah Everard story, and it was literally pillar to post, and quite rightly, because women's safety is so important, and that's why we'll do stories like this, because and I don't, it's not right, you guys, Pink Ladies, do so much good work, and I was shouting from the rooftops when those idiots dared to call you, far right. You're protecting your kids against a man who was sexually assaulting them, and that dangerous situation you found yourself in. But for me, it points to so much. It points, yes, women's safety, yes, the way some men treat women, but also the fact that knife crime in this country, I mean, I don't live in London, I work in London. I listen to Sadiq Khan pontificate every day about DEI and the rights of giving people, yes, he's done that, but no, there are knives prevalent everywhere. I've talked repeatedly about how I would increase stop and search. I'm not interested in the debate. The fact of the matter is, if you searched people for knives, you would find more. And if you said to people, the first time you're found, you're going to prison for 5 years, you ain't getting out on good behaviour. And the second time, you're going for 10. I swear to God. And somebody made a really good point the other day on a show I was doing. Do you remember the acid attacks became almost...
Yes.
And they said life imprisonment. And I don't know whether this is a fact. I'm sure we'll check it out. Acid attacks have completely decreased. They need to be stronger on knife crime, not just for women, but for all sorts of people. But,
I mean, if you,
but you're right about your daughter. My daughter works in a restaurant. I ring. She's on the phone to me when she walks home every night at 11 o'clock. She does close just to keep me on the phone.
We shouldn't have to live like this. My daughter the other night didn't come home on time. It turned out she was at school with a tutor. Her phone wasn't working. Straight away, you're terrified. We shouldn't be living like this.
No.
And, you know, when you were saying about the knife crimes, you know, 10 people, 11 people last week stabbed on a train. You know, Wayne, that poor guy Wayne walking his dog, stabbed to death. It is out of control. And you're so right. Unless the judicial system and we get a grip on law and order, people will keep doing it. You know, the guy that murdered Irina, that poor girl in New York, in the States, they're looking at the death penalty for that man. And rightly so. Here, you might get off in 6 months and be out in 1 year. You know, it's just, we're just not strict. We are not coming down on these people tough enough. And if there is no consequence management, they will keep doing it.
I mean, that is such a true comment. And what's even better about what you've said is that, you know, maybe I'm old-fashioned, right? You know, there are consequences to your actions, and if those consequences are severe enough to tell you that your actions are wrong, that's surely the difference between right and wrong. I don't understand how we... No, I mean, I remember doing a show about knife crime and being able to order a machete and a sabre online that arrived here within 24 hours. That should be looked at, but so should this. We can't do stop and search because it's racist. I don't care about the colour of your skin. I keep saying this about everything. I care about the fact that if it's normalised to carry a weapon in the street, right, a weapon in the street, then you have to do something. What was the Labour Party they brought in, I think, when they first came into power? You get a tenner for bringing your knife back.
Yeah, I mean,
that just incentivise you to go and buy more. That's ridiculous. You know, a lot of people disagree with me. I would be stopping and searching, and I would be increasing the time that you spend in jail if you dare to have one on you. And sure as eggs is eggs, that would change the game. But listen, I do want to say on a personal point of view, I think you did and do an amazing job, and do not let the detractors tell the Pink Ladies anything. I think it's...
Jeremy, could I just say one thing? On the 22nd of November, in Chelmsford, in Tyndall Square, we have a massive demonstration full of women. We've got women coming from Inverness, from Liverpool, from Manchester, at 12 o'clock, 22nd of November in Chelmsford. There are 1,200 migrant men being housed in a barracks just outside the town, and the women in that town are absolutely terrified.
What date is that?
The 22nd, Saturday, the 22nd of November.
I'll do my best to get. I'll do my best to get somebody down there on that day to give you some support from Talk. Is that all right, sweet?
And we're going to pay tribute to Katie, to Stephanie, to Lily, to Rihanna, and all those beautiful women that have lost their life for absolutely no reason.
Quite right. Well said. All a great job the Pink Ladies do. We'll get sorted on the 22nd of November. Thank you very much indeed. 11 minutes to 8. We're live across the United Kingdom, and those last two guests sum up what's wrong with this country. We've got a deluded man from the BBC, you know, typical lefty justifying a completely biased and institutionally warped BBC, and you've got a woman there, a mother, who's scared to let her kid walk home at night, who's organised the Pink Ladies to march and say women's safety is so important, we need to do something about knife crime. It's a busy morning. Your thoughts as ever, please, on 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory.
Firstly, the new Director General, whoever that is, needs to get a grip very quickly.
Who should it be? Who would your choice be?
That's a matter for the board of BBC. The only thing
I'm giving you the choice right now, Sir John. You can have anyone you want. Who would you want? Apart from yourself.
I'd love to do it, but I don't think that would go. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. No, but what I would say is that I hope that it's not somebody who is, a BBC lifer, someone who's spent their entire career within the BBC.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 7 minutes to 8 o'clock. We're live across the United Kingdom on the home of free speech and common sense. This is where the nation comes to talk. It is Talk. We appreciate all of you getting in touch this morning. 87222, start your message with the word Talk. Calls to 0344 499 1000. Whether it's the BBC, the one in, one out. Rachel Rees is scrapping, allegedly, the two-child benefit cap. You try saying that. It's all going on. Mike says, Jezza, your BBC supporting guest was deluded. Typical lefty. I was shouting at my telly. Well handled. Linda Whittingham, good morning. Why should the BBC just say sorry when they deliberately tried to trash Trump's credibility? They lied deliberately. Linda in Stalybridge thinks more should be done. Good morning to... I've no idea. John is not in the real world. This was no mistake. The BBC is not loved by all. I trust the BBC the least of anybody. Good morning, Jess. It's Deb in Devon. Don't forget the disgraceful invasion of privacy of Cliff Richard. I talked about this earlier, which he successfully sued them for £2 million. The list goes on. Paul Graysmark. Why is John Mayer wearing a rainbow scarf indoors? Paul in Dunoon. I've no idea. A bit Doctor Who, wasn't it, to be fair? Glenn. This was not a mistake. It was a deliberate deception. John Mayer is what's wrong with the BBC. My TV licence has been cancelled. That's Glenn in Newquay. Good morning to Clay Walker. JK, get that delusional off the TV. Great show. Clay in Folkestone. Lovely. Jessica Emery. She's in Dover. What inspires me is the people who haven't given up, the brave presenters, contributors and listeners who do still speak out about the gaslighting and the damage being done to this country. Please keep your texts coming. 87222. Let's start that other subject now. Well, let's just go back to it. Migrants, one in, one out. We made a deal with France. In the last 4 days, ladies and gentlemen, 2,121 people have come across in illegal boats. It's probably now 60,000 since Starmer took power. We say good morning to the man who should be running our borders, international border expert. He told me to say that. Henry Bolton, good morning. Right, listen, HB, we've only got 5 minutes. I'm joking. Honestly, this one in, one out, only 94 migrants have been removed under the treaty, whilst 57 have been brought to the UK legally in the same scheme. 2,121 in the last 4 days, and another one who was sent off has come back. I mean, it's a joke, man. The whole thing's a joke.
It would be funny if it wasn't actually happening. Look, it was never, ever going to be effective, Jeremy. I think we talked about that. This is just simply the British government trying to avoid doing something decisive by making people think that they are putting in effort into something. This would never, ever work. It was never, ever going to be on the scale that would provide a deterrent to people crossing the Channel. And indeed, there is already a growth of organised criminal activity around this, trying to present a situation where actually the people who, to create a situation where people then get sent back to the UK or in return for people coming this way. Somebody comes here.
So you don't. I mean, you're the expert, and even you can't make it sound like sense. All I know is that some weeks ago, a bloke who was a criminal was deported. I'm not having a go at you, right? At all. In a million years, I'd give you the job tomorrow. He disappeared. Then he comes back, and we gave him. This is what really wound me up, HB. Right? We gave him 500 quid to finally do one. which sends a very strong message. Why don't you keep breaking in and keep making 500 quid a time?
Look, everything is broken, Jeremy, and the reason for that, I think you will find, if I haven't been able to dig into it sufficiently, but I'm absolutely certain that the people who were escorting this individual were not law enforcement personnel. They did not have legal sort of law enforcement
What, were they from Wandsworth Prison, were they? Same sort of theory?
No, I think these were outsourced security company. Now, that's not their fault, but they don't have the same powers as police officers and immigration enforcement. So when they get to deal with this, what are they supposed to do when they've got this individual who then resists? They can't use force. So what I think you'll find they've done is they've said to the guy, look, we'll give you 500 quid if you go quietly. And he's done it. And I think you'll find it's something of that ilk that's happened here. But the whole system, none of this should be outsourced. None of it.
None.
A lot of our prisons are outsourced. Wandsworth is not. But look, until, Jeremy, we've got a government, whatever persuasion politically it is, that actually decides that it is going to lock horns with this problem decisively and has the courage to do so. And until that happens, we're only going to see this window dressing type of activity that actually is meaningless. It's presented to the British public, and we've got a new strategy, we've got a new plan, we've agreed this with the French or whoever. Yeah. All sounds good, a few headlines, you get a bit of a pause on the criticism, and it has no effect, particularly when you've got a Labour Party that is, a lot of its MPs and councillors and so on are actually part of the movement that wants us to have open borders and welcome these people in with open arms. It is against their DNA to be effective on this.
Anybody who does get into power should employ you. We haven't got time to go into perhaps the ideas we've heard from the Tories about Rwanda. We've talked about smashing the gangs. You've told me before it's really very simple. Most of all is the will. There's no doubt the British people, Henry, have a will to get this situation changed. Yeah. I think it's going to be the #1 issue at the next election. We appreciate your time, loving the flag, a good man. I was going to do something else with you, haven't got time. I've got to say good morning to the mother-in-law who said to me last night as she served me dinner, find it really weird that I go to bed and I'm serving you dinner and then I wake up in the morning, you're on the telly. Top woman, Jan Burton, big shout out, and the syrup sponge was great. We're heading back, by the way, with Jack Elsom, who wrote this amazing piece on the front of the Sun, the Beebs $1 billion bungle. It's all about Trump, it's about the 2-cap benefit, it's mostly about you. See you in 3, we're coming back.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hey, very good morning to you. Just gone 8 o'clock. It is Tuesday, the 11th of November. You win Morning Glory, the home of free speech on Talk. Can I just say, November the 11th is, of course, Armistice Day. Remembrance Sunday was extraordinary, actually, a couple of days ago. We were talking to so many people who took part and saw an increase in numbers. There's a lot of people will talk about the doom and gloom in this country, but actually patriotism is still there. Today, of course, was the day after the First World War when the Allies and Germany brought an end to that conflict and the deaths of so many by signing that agreement. And I think it's really important to look back, and I think today is a massively important day. We jokingly said a couple of hours ago, in the doom and gloom that is the United Kingdom, maybe you'd like to text with your things that make Britain great again. It's quite sparse, if I'm going to lie. 87222, start your message with the word Talk. But let's get to the main news stories of the day you're waking up to. Donald Trump, front page of The Sun, talk about it in a tick, has demanded a full apology from the BBC by Friday, or he wants $1 billion. Lots of people jumping up and down saying, this is understandable. The BBC is institutionally biased. It's wrong. It should be straight down the line. And some people, like John Mayer, who will play a bit of it later, was just on half an hour ago saying the BBC is the greatest thing in the world. It makes just the occasional mistake and needs to be supported and treated in a more decent way, not be kicked about by people like Trump and Farage. Bear in mind also that our own Prime Minister yesterday, when asked about the BBC, said that the BBC was stronger than ever to utterly deranged human beings. You're also waking up to the story that, well, a second small boat migrant that was sent back as part of that one in, one out, well, we sent him off and he's come back again. So are we going to send him off again and give him 500 quid, or is he going to come back again? It's such an effective system, isn't it? And also the news that Rachel Reeves to you guys, has hinted that she's going to scrap the 2-child benefit cap, which for many is a good thing. There are people phoning the show saying, hold on a second, how in the name of the Lord are we actively encouraging people to have more kids than they can afford, when we're also going to say, presumably in the budget on the 26th, we're going to raise income tax and we're going to screw the lot of you that go to work. It's a real issue this morning. 8322, what did I say? 0344 499 1000. Nearly gave out my mobile there. 8:05. Let me just start with the BBC and start with the man who wrote this truly wonderful article. We say a very good morning to Jack Eltham. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Jeremy. Yes, I'm good, thank you. Probably not as weary as Samir Shah, the head of the BBC, who's got a $1 billion lawsuit on his hands.
Well, I have to say, and this isn't taking aim at anybody, for me, and I think it is a fantastic piece this morning, Donald Trump has basically said, apologise in full by Friday, or I want $1 billion, which is £760 million, which actually the BBC could afford because they get $5.39 billion every year. However, we found out yesterday when we were on air that government sources had lent, we were on with Ryan actually, had lent on the BBC to get rid of Davey and Tenness, and they're saying there's open warfare. But to me, I know the Trump thing's really important, but to me, there's a bigger question, and I would hate to think, Jack, and love your thoughts on this, that all the do-gooders and people who justify the BBC will simply say, this is because of Donald Trump. It isn't. It's because of Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Bob Villan, Martine Croxall, the Hamas documentary, the way they treat J.K. Rowling. It's about, in my mind, a national broadcaster that is biased and is not what it's supposed to be, and I think that's a really important point.
I think for the past few years, especially under Tim Davies' watch, the BBC has felt in a state of just perma-crisis, and it has just lurched from one scandal to the next. You've named a few of them there. Now, to misquote Oscar Wilde, one scandal might look like carelessness, but a complete stack of them looks like something systemic. And I do think that there is a almost blind spot when it comes to the BBC leadership, and we saw it yesterday, where there was not even any real contrition or acknowledgement that there might be something institutional here. Now, at least I think it is incumbent on them, and we've seen 2 of their senior leadership go, it is incumbent on them, I think, to actually address this and probably to launch an investigation to see what is going on under the bonnet of the BBC, because the big mistakes that they make, whether it's eulogising the son of a Hamas minister, whether it's live streaming anti-Semitic chants at Glastonbury, whether it's doctoring footage of Donald Trump, whatever you want to pull up, it does always seem that these mistakes seem to come from a point of view of being liberal, lefty, progressive, anti-right.
Yes.
Now, I just think that, and I will make this point because I know many people at the BBC who take their duty of impartiality incredibly seriously. I've got colleagues who I work with in the political sphere in Westminster who uphold their standards of, I think, non-bias very, very seriously. But clearly, there is something going on at the BBC, and I think that the people that do want to defend the BBC, I think we have to do now is address that there might be a problem, and the worst thing you can do, I think, is by circling the wagons, closing up shop and saying nothing to see here, governor. And one of the problems last week is that when these accusations started dripping out in the Telegraph, we had radio silence from the BBC. And I think now, with this lawsuit on their hands, rather than, again, we saw Samir Shah saying, oh, we're not sure how we're going to respond to him yet, get on the front foot, come out with your response, and, you know, for goodness sake, show a bit of contrition, because, you know, that Panorama documentary was pretty disgraceful.
No, agreed. And I also like the point you made, that it's a bit like the police force when we sit here and we criticise, and we're talking about the very top of the tree. The men and women on the streets are doing a good job and must be frustrated. I'm sure there are plenty of journalists from the BBC, and I'm talking about people on the ground doing a good job. They tell me there could be a White House ban. That'll upset the BBC. But essentially up above, you're right, at board level, the executive level, it is not, I don't care, I'll argue with anybody, it is not unbiased, it is not, in my mind, doing what it says on the tin that a state broadcaster should do. And I think there are far too many examples. And I completely get the Trump thing. I think it's amazing, the article, but I also think it's time for the BBC to look at the different levels. Just a couple of things for you. This was Nigel Farage yesterday, Jack, on my show. Have a listen to what Nigel said.
I'm going to defund the BBC from its current model, be in no doubt about that. The BBC, under our plans, would be slimmed down to something very relatively small, but most of it would move to a subscription model to compete in the open market. You know, do I want it to have a basic role for news and current affairs? Yes, but it's going to have to be very, very different to the way it is now.
Thoughts on that, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, like, times have changed, right? You know, the BBC first came onto the scene, was it 100 years ago?
104 years ago, I think.
104 years ago. It was that, ITV. I mean, I think that's basically about it, right? And, like, now we have such a plurality of media outlets who are forced to pay their way and forced to stand on their own 2 feet in the world. And many people are looking at the BBC, in which if you own a TV, you are forced to fork out £170 a year on pain of fine, and if not, imprisonment. People just think that actually, you know, it is stuck. Its funding model is stuck in a bygone era. And, you know, this charter review is coming up. And I'm sure that the licence fee model will be something that comes under scrutiny, because there is a growing chorus, not just in Westminster, but beyond as well, where people aren't watching the BBC as much as they are, because there is so much other choice out there. Platforms like Talk, you know, other streaming services, if you want entertainment, Netflix, you know, the rest of it. And so for the BBC, it really now, I think, needs to grapple with the fact that it might not have the licence fee.
Yeah, it's almost as if, Jack, right? It's almost as if the time has come, not just through their mistakes, but through their output, actually, to be on a level playing field. I mean, I had this bizarre man, John Mayer, on before, saying to me, this is outrageous. It's just a one-off mistake. I listed 6 and he agreed with me. But he would say they do tremendous work. And yes, we found out yesterday that 12.2 million people watched the BBC's coverage of the Lionesses winning the World Cup final. Traitors, 12 million. Strictly, 11 million. Fantastic. But you cannot base insisting that people give you £180 a year willy-nilly or you go to prison or get fined on 3 good programmes when your news output does not do what it says, and I keep saying this all morning, on the tin. I believe that the BBC on a level playing field would get subscriptions for Strictly, for Traitors, for the football, for a lot of things. I don't think that they would for news, and that is something that really alienates and annoys people, not just the public, not just those of us who are doing our jobs. You're right, we have to, you're the same with The Sun. If you don't write good stuff, people won't buy the newspapers. That's the way it works. I just feel that the unfairness of the BBC's position in terms of the marketplace has been passed over for years because they have been straight down the line. Now they're not. Everybody's going, why are we paying for this stuff? It's blatantly left-wing. It's blatantly liberal. You know, people know what they're going to get from Talk. They know what they're going to get from the Sun newspaper. They know what they get from the Guardian newspaper. I think they're beginning to know what they get from the BBC, and it certainly isn't bloody balanced, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, you know, I love Traitors. I love Gavin and Stacey. I love Line of Duty, but it's a bit of a non-argument, really, because I could also list off 10 other programmes from Netflix or 10 other programmes from Apple Prime, you know. So the people that go, the BBC does great stuff, totally agree, but so do all these other platforms. And so, you know, but they're not, but they don't have the luxury of getting guaranteed income to the tune of £5 billion a year. And so, you know, it is that argument now. We need to have a public conversation, really. Coming up to this charter renewal about what do we want the BBC to do? Do we want it to be the current licence fee model? At the moment, that looks very unsustainable. Are we going to move to a more marketplace model? Is there going to be a carve-out for news? You know, that is the sort of questions which I think that people are going to have to be asking as this charter renewal comes up. I think it's in 2027.
Completely agree. It's a bit of fun, but I need to ask your opinion. You're the political editor of The Sun. What is the point politically of Ed Davey? I'll let you muse on that while I tell you what Ed Davey, who used to be in charge of the Post Office, but he doesn't talk about that. This is him on the BBC.
The BBC News is the most trusted news source in the world, and we should be really proud of it. It's typical of British values. Of course, there's the odd mistake they make. I have to say, Donald Trump makes many, many more, as does Nigel Farage. And so the fact that Nigel Farage is basically teaming up with President Trump to criticise the BBC is shocking. It's unpatriotic, it's wrong, and it shows that he wants Trump's America, with his attacks on free media, coming to the UK.
I'm going to let Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun, respond to Ed Davey.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, Ed Davey has carved himself out a bit of a niche. I think he sort of finds it his new sort of plaything where he just loves to bash Donald Trump. And he thinks that he is going to win votes in the UK because Starmer is forced to cozy up to Trump. The Tories and Reform both respect him. So he is now the UK's anti-Trump candidate. But in doing so, I think almost risks making himself look a bit silly, because yesterday he came out of the traps very early on and said, we need the BBC to defend our values against people like Nigel Farage. It's like, well, hang on a minute. If the BBC is meant to be impartial, as you just said it is, then surely it needs to treat all parties equally. And there are 30% of people in this country that are currently backing Nigel Farage. 36%. And so I don't really think, well, exactly. So I don't really think that the argument washes very much with Ed Davey. But clearly, you know, he's got his little stick now, which he likes to beat.
I can't take him seriously when he hasn't got a. I can't take him seriously when he hasn't got a red cat sweat. What am I calling it?
Just an important point, Jeremy. The Lib Dems in the last. I'm on my soapbox now. The Lib Dems in the last Parliament got their biggest ever share of MPs. They got something like 70 MPs.
72
MPs. And for the life of me, I really don't know what they've done with it. You know, people like Reform, even other smaller parties like the SNP, are making more noise in Parliament, and I'm there every single day, than the Liberal Democrats. They try and insert themselves into debate, don't make much noise. But what's happened to all of the...
Can I jump in
what's
and say...
What's happened to all the stuff they stood in the election
I don't like Zach Polanski's politics, but he's done more for the Green Party in 2 months.
Exactly.
Nigel Farage has got 5 MPs, right? The truth of the matter is that Ed Davey has absolutely no policy, nothing. What he does is he does that sort of activist thing, or he jumps on the bandwagon. He's got Trump and Farage derangement syndrome. It's extraordinary. And if I was Nigel Farage or even Zach Polanski, and I say that through gritted teeth, I would look at how a man that incompetent, lacking any real policies, ended up with 15% of the seats or 20% of the seats in It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary.
Can I make to the point? Because they complain to the BBC the whole time that they give reform undue coverage. Nigel Farage, and listen, whatever you think of him, almost every single week will hold a press conference where he puts himself up for questioning by journalists such as myself, and he takes every single question essentially from all outlets, be it people from The Sun, be it people from The Guardian. Every single question. I cannot think of the last time Ed Davey held a press conference where he answered questions from the media. I genuinely can't. And if I'm wrong, then correct me. But I cannot think of the last time. And so when he complains that he's not getting enough coverage, I'm thinking, put yourself out there, man. Do something. Get some policies. Don't just hitch yourself onto various, causes of the moment.
Completely.
I think they're very good at that. But I think, for them, try and get on the front foot a bit more.
There's no real
give some helpful advice.
You're right. You talk about mistakes. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the Ed Davey thing I was talking about, he was Post Office Minister. A BBC News article last year, in brackets, I don't know if it was edited or not, close brackets, Ed Davey apologises to Alan Bates over poorly judged letter at Post Office inquiry for initially refusing to meet him while serving as Post Office Affairs Minister in 2010. So, if you believe the BBC, he did make an appointment and talk about his time at the Post Office. Politically, one other thing to talk to you about this morning. Rachel Reeves, thieves, whatever. Budget, 26th of November. I think most people have ascertained that there's going to be major income tax or tax increases. Despite the protestations in the manifesto, this wasn't going to happen. This has caused all sorts of people to go, really? You're just no good to your word. Every time I see Rachel Reeves, she looks even more scared on camera, as if the whole thing's rounding in on her. She's hinted now that she will scrap the two-child benefit cap. Let's just watch this, if we can, Jack, briefly. This is Rachel Reeves, people.
I don't think we can lose sight as well of the costs to our economy in allowing child poverty to go unchecked. And in the end, a child should not be penalised because their parents don't have very much money. Lots and lots of different reasons why families change shape and size over time. And I don't think that it's right that a child is penalised because they are in a bigger family through no fault of their own.
It's interesting, with all this BBC stuff this morning, this has really resonated, Jack. A lot of people saying, well, hold on a second, and this is where I think this country is changing. Yes, of course, people should be given the chance to have children if that's what they want, but there surely comes a point after two where it is not unfair to say, what's she saying, penalising children into poverty? Well, don't have kids if you can't afford to feed them. The state shouldn't be wiping your backside forever. Yes, help out, give people the chance, but this is going to cause huge anger, mostly, by the way, because she's going to raise taxes, we all know that, while saying to people who want 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids, and by the way, I pay for all of mine, the state will do it for you. This is a big political contentious thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it goes to show really how politically weak she is and how exposed and vulnerable she is to her Labour backbenchers. I mean, there's the moral argument that always comes with the two-child benefit cap. Some people say we need to scrap it to get down child poverty. Some people say, I don't want other people paying for my kids, right? If you even park that, the point of this is that in the election, Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves consistently said, we cannot scrap the two-child benefit cap because it's unaffordable, right? Now they're saying the public finances are so bad that we're going to have to break one of our main manifesto commitments and raise income tax on every single one of you that go to work. But actually, they're good enough that we can spend £3 billion scrapping this thing that we said we weren't going to do. How on earth do you make the two things marry up? On the one hand, the public finances are good enough that we're going to break our manifesto, but they're bad. Sorry, but they're bad enough, but they're good enough so that we can do something we said we weren't going to do. This shows that how I think exposed she is to the rebellious nature of Labour MPs who have seen this as their totemic issue for the past few months. When Keir Starmer went to address the Parliamentary Labour Party last Monday, it was virtually the only thing which Labour MPs said again and again and again. I don't see how they justify putting up income tax on tens of millions of people when they said just 16 months ago in that election, they specifically were not going to do that. Scrapping the two-child benefit cap, something they said they weren't going to do, they're now looking to do it. And I think that it's that argument which is going to be a really hard sell for Rachel Reeves.
Couldn't agree more, Jack. Really appreciate your time this morning. I know how busy you are. If you haven't got it, go and get the Sun front page from Jack Elson. Beeb's billion-dollar bungle about Donald Trump suing the BBC for $1 billion. Also, as he just said, all about the two-child cap benefit. He just nailed it there, didn't he? I'm going to raise taxes on you all, says Rachel Reeves. All of you that go to work and struggle to meet your bills. But if you want 3, 4, 5, 6 kids and you're not working and you're struggling, we'll pay for you. Good morning to you. Take us to an ad break.
Hey Jazz, it's T from Worcestershire. I just wanted to come on and say that I would have been a great candidate for your old show many years ago. I grew up in domestic violence, became a teen mom, ticked all the boxes of the trappings of that failure to begin. But then I found myself in that queue at the post office for benefits myself for a whole year. And I felt great shame in that. In that shame pushed me to get out of that. I chipped away at life. I had a job as a Saturday girl prior to getting pregnant at a bakery. And I then found myself working in a post office and dishing out the money to the people in that queue. And it's a really sad spectrum because you have a lot of people who know how to play the system. So it doesn't encourage people to go and get a job, to get out of that, unless they have that same opinion like me, that if you have a child, it's down to you to pay for them, that the benefit system or anything like that is there for you in desperate need to get out, to get help, you know? And I just wanted to come on and say that, really.
This morning, we talked about Armistice Day and in the doom and gloom, what makes Britain great again. And I genuinely mean that. People like tea make this country great again. What an absolutely outstanding call. And it goes to all of those people who go, why do people sit and expect everybody else to do what you've got to do yourself? Of course, we can support people. That's the whole idea of the benefit system or the welfare state. That's great. But we would be lying to ourselves, would we not, as T put it so well, if we didn't say that we're now gamed by everybody. We're gamed by migrants who play the system and find loopholes. We're gamed. The NHS is played by people who have never paid into it and fly into this country and have operations. And our benefit system is gamed by people. It's become a bloody career choice. It was never, ever meant to be that. That is the call of the day by a mile. 8:25 on Morning Glory.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, set of 8:30, Tuesday, the 11th of November, Armistice Day, the day we remember our fallen heroes, the day that, after the First World War, Germany and the Allies made that agreement. What is great, by the way, my friends, about this country, amongst all the doom and gloom? Your involvement, by the way, fantastic this morning. Hello to John in Bury. Regarding Reeves and capping child benefit shares, when the country is skint, I've nothing to say, but this is outrageous. I brought 3 girls up, I've gotten 6 grandchildren, and I think it's a parent's responsibility to feed your children, not working people. I think child benefits should be scrapped completely, as it's not sustainable to be paying out and work to bring your kids up. I'd rather my taxes were spent on policing this country and having a no-tolerance approach on all crime and act as a deterrent to stop scumbags taking over. Slash the welfare budget, make sure people don't starve. The incentive to work will come back when things become tougher. We need deterrence across this country. We are on our backside. Let's head to Hertfordshire. Andrew, you're a Morning Glory. How are you, my friend?
Really good. Lovely to speak to you. It was an American senator that said this: if you can't feed them, don't breed them. And that really sums the whole situation up. In relation to the BBC, when Rupert Murdoch was challenged over the News of the World, he acted with probity and integrity. He went before that Common Select Committee, said, I don't want to be here, and then he put it right. He shut down the News of the World. And the Sun has benefited because it's become more like a modern-day Express. It's doing really well. The BBC needs to shut down Panorama. It needs to shut down BBC Verify, and it needs to shut down the LGBTQ plus madness desk. Does those 3 things, and then the news should be 20 minutes of news reporting. If there's a horrific car crash on the M4, heaven forbid, that is news. Nothing in Gaza. That's what they need to...
I couldn't agree with you more, my friend. To me, it's a really, and it's a great call. It's a simple theory. The BBC, as your state broadcaster, is supposed to offer a line down the middle. And anybody who, you know, comes on here and says, oh, yes, but you're this or you're... The BBC should put both sides. But I'll tell you a story very quickly. I was at my son's speech day. I might have told this before. It was 1,000 parents and kids sat in this sort of tent. I don't know what his name is. It might be Andy Zeltman. Anyway, he's on the BBC. He does a Radio 4 quiz of the week, and he does, I think, the BBC Test match scoring. He's quite well-known comedian. And for the first 3 minutes, Andrew, it was funny. And then he literally changed face and he looked at all the kids and he said, let me tell you what I really want to tell you, because you won't be told this in your posh school. Your parents and your grandparents let you down by voting for Brexit. They let you down by not saying that net zero is the most important thing in the world. They've let you down by allowing you not to understand how bad the Palestinian situation is. And I sat there as my mouth continued to drop open, right? barely concealing my anger. And when I walked out, the deputy headmaster said, "That was great." I went, "No, it wasn't. And let me tell you something, if my son wasn't leaving, I'd take him out." And he went, "Why?" "It was a bit of fun." I went, No. That is typical BBC. There is one side to their argument, and that is not, in my humble opinion, Andrew, what the state broadcaster should be doing. Do you not agree?
Oh, 100%. And the interesting thing there is it's their opinion which they're pushing on people. They're no different to Kim Jong-il in North Korea. And they have to go back to what they should be doing, reporting the news, and not, if you watch them, it's all about taking a snippet and then 8 to 10 people with opinion. And that opinion is driven by, and the funniest thing of all, they say the North London elite. Didn't we pay millions, like 300 million, to move them all to Salford? And yet that woman walked into Resign Day and she walked into London. I thought they were all in Salford.
Well, they were when I was there. Great call, Andrew in Hertfordshire. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making it talk. The place where the nation comes to debate every day. Julia is here from 10 o'clock and Ian Collins sounding fantastic here from 1 o'clock this afternoon. 0344 499 1000 on the day that Donald Trump demands a full apology from the BBC, or he wants £1 billion on the day that a second small boat migrant who was removed from the United Kingdom under that farcical agreement with France, you know, one in, one out, he's back. He's back. He's only been gone a few days and he's back, so that doesn't work. The thing that's really got you going this morning, though, is Rachel Reeves hinting she'll scrap the 2-child benefit cap. We say a very good morning to political and economic commentator Jamie Jenkins. Jamie, how are you?
Oh, good, Jeremy. How are you doing?
Nice background, son. Are you sat in your room there, or literally? Look at that. It's looking great, isn't it? Good man. Well done. Jamie, I don't want to complicate the 2-child benefit cap, but basically, in this country, we have child benefit. You get an amount for the first child, an amount for the second child, and there's always been a cap because there is an argument that says, by all means, have a family. But if you can't really afford it, it shouldn't be down to the state for you to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 kids. Rachel Reeves came to power with Keir Starmer saying, we will not raise income tax and we will keep the child cap. That's the way it's going to be. Well, they reckon on November the 26th, not only is she increasing income tax on working people, but she's now going to say that she would scrap this. I just want to play you a couple of things. This is Reeves from last November, peeps. Have a listen.
Now wipe the slate clean under the mismanagement and the chaos of the previous government. It's now on us. We've put everything out into the open. Okay. We've set the spending envelope for the course of this Parliament. We don't need to come back for more. We've done that now. We've wiped the slate clean.
So you're saying, actually, there's not going to be an Oliver Twist moment. You're not going to come back and say, we want another tax rise. Or if you did, that would be a huge failure for your government, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to be able to write 5 years' worth of budgets on this show today, but what we have done, there's no need.
Will there be more tax rises?
No, you're right, Trevor. There is no need to come back with another budget like this. We never need to do that again. We've now, Trevor, set the spending envelope for the remainder of this Parliament. We don't need to increase taxes further.
Jamie, that was last November. This, though, my friend, was yesterday, Rachel Reeves.
I have been really clear that we are looking at both taxes and spending as part of this budget. The economic circumstances have deteriorated since a year ago because of those conflicts, because of those trade barriers. And as a result, we are having to look at taxes and spending, and it's got to be both of those things. And the speech I made last week was about setting the context for the budget, which is a difficult one. And I think people can see that and they understand why this is a difficult budget and why there are things that have happened in the last year that we couldn't have foreseen a year ago.
Jamie Jenkins, she says there the finances have deteriorated. I would suggest that's because of her inept stewardship of the nation's finances. What do you say?
Yeah, so we've only got to look at the facts of the matter on this one, Jeremy. So if we look at the OBR, so the kind of the budget watchdog, what they did is they do their forecasts in the spring and in the autumn. And before Labour came into power, they were forecasting between August 24, so about a month after Labour got in, and September 25, the latest figures that we've got, they forecast that the country would be borrowing around 102.6 billion. Still a large number, huge number. But we then have the facts of what actually happened. It was 194.4 billion. So pretty much you've got a 92 billion pound black hole created by Rachel Reeves. Now, okay, why have we borrowed so much more money? Well, we had the pay deals for the unions.
Yeah.
Inflation's higher than some comparable countries across Europe. That's in part to do with some of the government's policies. The jobs tax is one of them, where they put the cost of employment on. So Rachel Reeves' own policies are having a direct effect on the borrowing figures, which is why they're coming back for more money. And then the figures that we've had up this morning, Jeremy, quite shocking numbers. So we've now had 170,000 job losses on the payroll since the election.
Yeah.
We've seen about over 60,000 in the last 2 months alone. So it's getting worse. It's not improving, it's getting worse. And again, you can link that back to the jobs tax. So when you've got more people out of work, you've got less tax coming in. So then what she's looking to do is tax us more, basically people who are in work, because of the ineptitude of her government. And one final thing on it, Jeremy, which is quite interesting. If you look across the country, there's job losses across all of Britain. If you really zoom in, though, the biggest percentage loss is in Westminster. So maybe we could do with Starmer and Reeves be added to the payroll job losses as well.
I couldn't agree more. It is frightening, because a lot of people will say, oh, you're being really unfair. And I wouldn't be... Listen, I failed maths O-level about 6 times. I'm useless, right? But she doesn't come across as adapted at all. Ineptness is something that seems to follow around. When I see her being interviewed, she looks like she's caught in the headlights. She seems to backtrack on a daily basis. I think the only reason she survived is I think that probably the Prime Minister knows that she and his futures are inextricably linked. But I don't have any... And, you know, a lot of people say, well, she's the first woman Chancellor. Brilliant, really respect her. Margaret Thatcher was the first female Prime Minister, right? Look at Theresa May. She was appalling. I just think this woman is not good enough at her job. And Jamie, you know, we said earlier about, you know, what the doom and gloom. It is doom and gloom economically. It is hard for people, isn't it?
Yeah, and when you look at those job losses, the biggest group that's been hit hardest are the people under 35. You know, we've seen over 220,000 job losses since the election. They are the future. And those are the people who are losing jobs. And they talk about coming in with new policies to get younger people back into work. Well, the jobs tax and the significant national insurance rises for the younger people looks good on paper, but when you increase the cost of people who haven't generally got that much experience, those starter jobs, people aren't going to employ them. And ultimately, we've seen 88,000 jobs lost in retail now since the election, 74,000 jobs in hospitality. You know, these are those entry-level jobs that get people going. And if you haven't got that, what's the future for the young people? You know, young people tend to vote for socialism, but all they're getting is really unemployment instead. And I think to the point you said with Rachel Reeves, she's gone down this road. She can't backtrack and say I've made mistakes, because she just loses the confidence of her party completely. But she's already lost the confidence of the country. So I think she's just got to go.
Couldn't agree more. Really good to have you on, Jamie. Thank you so much indeed for your patience as well, pal. 20 minutes to 9 o'clock. It's Morning Glory on Talk. The mother-in-law's just texted me. It's true. If you are working and earn a certain amount, you don't qualify for child benefit, which proves it doesn't pay anymore to work hard in this country. This is a woman and her husband who did 4 jobs a week to make ends meet, to bring 4 kids up, looking at it and going, why is everybody having their backside wiped? Right, Armistice Day, we're desperately trying to find things that make Britain great still. Paul, good morning.
Paul and Stoke, what's great about Britain? Going for a pint with your best mates on a cold wintry evening, sitting by a fire, having a few beers and a chat. Cheers, great show.
It's all right if you've got friends. Morning Glory, we're back.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 18 minutes to 9. We're live across the UK. It's Morning Glory with JK. Keep those calls coming, 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Hello to Phil from Essex. He says, all I can say about Rachel Reeves is that she's a stuttering, mumbling buffoon, and how she ever got elected is beyond me. Nice. Mike's in Lincoln. Good morning, Jezza. Regarding child benefit, as a man the same age as you who grew up in poverty in the 60s and 70s, I feel we need to provide that safety net for those who truly are on the breadline. But removing the second child cap just encourages those feckless layabouts amongst them to have more kids. The cap should remain and child benefits should be means tested so that only those who truly need it receive it. You know what, Mike in Lincoln, I completely agree, and it's how I feel genuinely about the heating for the pensioners, because there are pensioners who don't need it, but there are millions who do. There are people who don't need child benefit, but there are millions who do. And the systems, all of the systems, it seems to me, many of the welfare and benefit systems just are playable. People can game it, the system, and that is not what it was meant to say. Margaret in Birmingham, how has Rachel from Accounts become the first ever Chancellor? How has she got the brass neck to tax anything that moves? Presumably to appease her backbenchers. Get a grip, love, or get out. Morning, Jez, says Tony. Great show. Britain is El Dorado. Benefit hotels, food, healthcare, etc. Until a government with the gonads to stop the freebies, nothing will change. Well, many people are saying that Reform, who I can tell you have led the last 153 opinion polls. They're at about 36% nationally. Second place, latest opinion poll, was the Green Party. Zach Polanski, the man who used to hypnotise women and make their breasts grow, allegedly. That's where we're at with British politics. Yesterday, Nigel was on this show, and he also unveiled a serial entrepreneur, investor and philanthropist who was the founder of Checkatrade. We say a very good morning to Reform's new business guru, Kevin Byrne. Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
I'm really good. Yeah, bit of a mixed day today. Always reflect full on Poppy Day, but it's also my daughter's birthday. So, it's a good day. Thank you. How are you?
It's interesting saying that. My late mother's birthday was the 11th of November today. She'd have been 95 today. And actually, Armistice Day was for our family the jewel of her birthday. But also, and I said it earlier, was really heartened this Sunday, Kevin, to see more people than usual at Remembrance Sunday services across the United Kingdom, which I think says an awful lot about the feelings within the country. One of the things I'm really keen to talk to you about, you were announced yesterday as Reform's new business guru by Nigel. Small businesses have always been, in my humble opinion, the very epicentres of how you create growth. People set up a business, they find a product, a brand, a marketing image, whatever it is. They employ people, they create orders, they make money, it permeates down through the economy. It's slightly ironic then that this government came to power talking about growth and immediately put an NI on small businesses, which has forced many to close their doors. What do small businesses need from their governments to work?
That's a really good question. And there's a plethora of different things that need to be looked at, in my view. The tax pressure is just immense upon small businesses. The cost of energy and that inflation in those costs is huge. There's a huge issue with late payments from the bigger companies to the smaller companies. There's lots of red tape and employment law. There's things like the VAT threshold. Let me just talk about that one thing for a moment, Jeremy. The VAT threshold in the UK at the moment is £90,000. And if you go above that, you've got to register. And let's say the average person does, and I'm talking about trades because that's my expertise. Let's say the average person has £36,000 of materials and £54,000 in wages when it comes to the 90,000 break. Are they at that point going to be going, do you know what, if I go above 90, I've got to take someone on. I've got too much work. So what pressure does that put on that tradesman to not grow? Or what pressure does that put on that tradesman to try and get cash payments or try and get their customers to pay for the materials directly? and it stifles the growth of the economy. If that happens to, say, 1 in 4 tradesmen that are on that edge of wanting to take someone on board, but they don't because of that VAT threshold. Imagine that's just 1 in 4. That's an massive loss. And what it also does, it forces these tradesmen into doing things that are against their integrity. They feel they have to because they don't want to break that threshold and have all the paperwork that's on top of it. My view is most tradesmen and most small businesses, they just want to get on with their job.
Yeah.
They just want to look after. They want to fix your car. They want to feed you. They want to sell you clothes. But all this regulation and red tape.
Well,
I mean, just
it's
one
really
small
interesting
thing.
because Nigel yesterday with Used to Buying was saying that strange enough, despite Brexit, Brussels, the European Union, were continuing to make life a misery for British small businesses, and 50 years of endless red tape needs stripping aside, and that's why he's announced you, because presumably we haven't got long, and I don't mean this badly. What would reform do to revitalise, re-energise those small businesses that we both agree are the very bedrock of our society?
That's a really good question.
That's
and I
two
don't
in a row. How about that?
Yeah,
That's honestly
two really good questions. Yeah, I can answer the first one. The second one's a little bit more difficult. I can't sit here and make policy decisions for Nigel. And what I can say is Nigel is he's an incredible guy. His ability to retain information and conversations is second to none, and he talks to me about various things that he wants to do. But I'm under almost orders. Kev, you can't talk about policy.
No, but listen. That's very honest. Now the critics have.
There's a lot to work out.
Well, do you know what? I love your honesty because listen, I've done some work with reform, and the critics will say, "Oh, well, it's all well and good shouting from the side," but. Yes, that's fair enough, but until you're in a position of power and you can't equate what's going on at that time. But what you can say confidently, I suspect, is that reform's aim would be to take the brakes off controls, red tape, whatever it is that is holding back the development and the success of small business, right? It would be fair to say that, right?
Of course. And, the Employment Rights Bill.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Who wrote that? It wasn't someone that's run a business.
Well, it was Angela Rayner, and she's now running a new business. Have you heard about Rayner's new business? It's called Wrong Move. Do you think it'll work? You'd like that,
well, she can probably push it through, can't she? She's got some power behind her. But it just staggers me. If I needed brain surgery, I would want someone that's experienced in brain surgery, and I want someone who's experienced in the government that's run businesses successfully for many, many years to make the policies and the decisions. And I don't think we've got that at the moment. I mean, if I'm wrong, correct me, I don't think there's a single person on the front line of the Labour bench that's run a business.
Well, I don't think there's anybody on the front of the Labour bench who's ever had a job that's not in a think tank, the Fabian Society or some local council. I don't think, and that's one of the things that Reform talks about, and I think talks about well, that Richard Tice, that Nigel have run successful businesses. They know the good, the bad and the ugly. Kevin, listen, great to have you on board with Talk, of course, and also Reform, and we look forward to dealing with you many more times over the next few months. Thank you very much indeed. Announced yesterday by Nigel Farage as Reform's business guru. Kevin Byrne there, OBE, founder of Checkatrade. What is it, 9 minutes to 9 o'clock? We're live across the UK. Loads and loads. Oh, God. Mick says, what's great about Britain? We never have coups to get rid of a useless, treacherous, scandalous, crappy government and Prime Minister. Let's go to Wayne. Good morning, Wayne.
Good morning, Jeremy. So, Labour nicking reform policies. I'm pretty sure Nigel said, I will scrap the two-child benefit cap. However, he put caveats. Married couples, working families, not a right to sit on your backside and just pump out cash cows. However, this is Labour. They do everything wrong. So let's be pretty honest. All they've done is Tony Blaired the crap out of it, because all that's going to happen is from 1997, like we had, where people and mums are going to sit at home pumping out child after child after child to get the income, to get the benefits, to get the money, because that's what we had. And then that's what created our generation of people on benefits. They are just putting in decades decades of debt and austerity that we need to put forward to bring this country back. Madness, mate. Utter madness.
The alternative of speaking German or being ruled by the Nazis, or seeing terrorism flourish in the middle in Afghanistan, I think that's worse. It's not a question of being worth it. And I understand. Look, I mean, of course, I can't understand in the same way. I didn't lose as many friends as he did, and I didn't serve in Normandy and all the rest of it. Do I think that things are going awry in various different ways? Of course I do. But do I think the alternative of being ruled by Nazis is just horrific? I'm eternally grateful for the extraordinary courage and sacrifice of those people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 5 to 9. Let's do some sport. You're going to push the button, Big Mark?
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Very good morning to the Chelsea correspondent from The Sun. That'll wind me up. Dan King, good morning.
Winds me up as well.
Does that mean you're a Chelsea fan?
No. We're strictly neutral. You know this, Jeremy. Journalists.
Who do you
Objective, completely.
Well, you are, because you don't work for the BBC. Who do you support?
Can't possibly reveal that.
Yeah, you can. I support West Ham.
No, I can't. No, I really can't, Jeremy.
All right, I'll let you off. Listen, Liverpool, everybody talking about Liverpool. There they were, ran away with it last season, spent about 400 million quid. We talked about this disallowed goal, that's fine. But more importantly, what the hell has happened to a team that seemed to have all before them, started well in their first few games this season, have collapsed to the point where they seem to be the weakest link at the moment. This Florian Wirtz in midfield looks like a kid, a powder puff kid to me, and what do I know about football? It's all gone a bit wrong. And the critics are now saying, Dan, that actually Slot won the Championship, the Premier League, with Klopp's team, and now he's built his own team. It's not as good.
Well, I think slightly unfair on Slot that if it was Klopp's team, then Klopp should have won the league with that team, shouldn't he? I think that's one
Good
one
point.
point to make. And I think there's a lot of things going on at Liverpool at the moment. I think there are a number of players who are out of form or not quite fit. So you've got the centre-back Ibrahima Konate, who's having a terrible season, Mo Salah, who's having a terrible season by anyone's standards, let alone his, and Alexis McAllister in midfield, who still doesn't seem to be quite 100% fit and able to control games as he should. And I think you've also, as you hit on there, the big signings of the summer, Florian Wirtz, as Gary Neville was saying at the weekend, he doesn't seem to have the physicality at the moment to cope with the Premier League, whatever his skills might be. And Alexander Isak, another British record signing, has been injured and hasn't been able to make an impact. I think one thing that affects all those factors is, and we shouldn't overlook, is the death of Diogo Jota during the summer. I don't think anybody, unless that's happened to them, can appreciate what kind of impact they'll have on a group of players. Not only the group of players and the friends that he left at Liverpool, but also on those players' ability to then integrate new players. If they're thinking about the death of their close friend, it's just a bit harder to integrate new players into that. And I think probably the new players feel that too.
I genuinely mean that. I think that's a fantastic point, mate, and something that a lot of people have not talked about. I think that might. You're absolutely right. The horror of Diogo Jota, for all to witness, must have had a profound impact. Just quickly, Man City seem to have their mojo back, don't they?
Yes, I think probably the only hope now for a competitive title race is that Manchester City can get on one of those runs which they've got on previously. And let's be clear that in previous years, when they've won the title, they have had slightly dodgy starts and have come through. I think there are still some question marks about this team as to whether they can string together those 10, 15, 20 games without defeat, which is going to take not only to bring back the points difference there already is to Arsenal, but to keep pushing and pushing, because I can't see Arsenal dropping many points. But City certainly looked in the groove against Liverpool on Sunday, and I think most neutrals will hope that they can at least provide some kind of title race this time.
Yeah, listen, as Piers Morgan says, Arsenal will win the Premier League, and I say to him, if they don't, mate, you will never, ever hear the end of it. Thank you so much indeed. Dan King from The Sun, Chelsea correspondent, but he won't tell me who he supports. That's his business, he doesn't have to, does it? It's almost 9 o'clock, we're live across the UK. Be it Trump, small boats or Rachel Reeves, your calls and your input are welcome. We head to the news at 9 and we kick off the next hour with Nigel Evans on Talk Breakfast. Back in.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome to the final hour of Morning Glory for Tuesday, the 11th of November. And before we continue, of course, Armistice Day, the day after the First World War, the Allies and Germany brought an end to that conflict and put an end to the killing, the mass killing. And Armistice Day, talked earlier about, it was my late mother's birthday. It's always meant a lot. And I'd got a text. I want to read this out from Natasha. Thank you so much, by the way, for sending this. She says, Jez, I wonder if you would read this out, as I know you're patriotic and you support our military. My father died yesterday evening peacefully at the age of 102 on the eve of Armistice Day. He was an old soldier, Jez, with a long and distinguished military career. I was beyond proud of him. My country was that I too joined the forces. He had the best of England and today, and I want to remember him and all those who have given their lives in the line of duty and those who are prepared to do so, and say a massive, massive thank you. It's great. Listen, thank you for entrusting us with that. And 102 and fought for his country. And it is sometimes easy to sit here amongst the mire and the misery and forget that. I always go on about this generation. I wish this generation would be able to hear more stories like her dad's story, who put his life and everything about his life on the line to create an environment, a home, a country that it seems to me, without being cynical, so many people are setting about destroying. But there's one thing I'll tell you about talk, where the nation does come to talk, right? We ain't going to let that happen. Not in a million years. This is going to be a place that you can come to and say your bit without fear of retribution. We're not out to shock. I've heard all the critics say, oh, you're going to have a go at this and go at that. Listen, when things need being got at, they will be got at, if that's what you want to do. 0344 499 1000. You're waking up or driving to work or heading back from the school run to the headlines. Donald Trump, front page of The Sun, demanding a full apology from the BBC by Friday. Or, he says, I'll threaten to sue the corporation for $1 billion. Only the Donald. I did say earlier, right, whilst I completely understand that, and I get the importance of it as a story, let's not forget why the BBC's whole being is on the rocks. Where do we start? Savile, Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Martin Croxall being just told she has to say pregnant people instead of pregnant women. That Hamas documentary. Just so many examples, right, of complete incompetence from a broadcaster that's supposed to be, what, unbiased, straight down the line, our state broadcaster. I don't know if you think the BBC's in trouble. Keir Starmer doesn't. He said they're stronger than ever, proving yet again that he doesn't even know what his own name is. 0344 499 1000. Also, oh, great, migrants. You know that one in, one out deal with Macron, the little French man? It's not working. 2,121 have come in the last 4 days, from Thursday to Sunday. But today we can report that a man who arrived back in the UK waters on a dinghy on Sunday was in fact a man who we'd sent back to France a few days ago because he'd already got here illegally. And he's back again, which makes a mockery of the whole thing. But what's really got your goat this morning, I have to say, is Rachel Reeves hinting she'll scrap the two-child benefit cap, basically in layperson's terms. Do you see what I've done? Even I'm saying layperson's terms. You get child benefit, an amount for the first kid, an amount for the second kid, and then it stops, because there's plenty of people who believe that actually that increases the chances of fecklessness. Oh, just have as many kids and we'll pay. No, you should also, yes, be encouraged. We can help, but there comes a point where working people need to understand that they deserve a little bit, not just sitting on your backside. Stephanie, good morning.
I find this Rachel Reeves thing with the benefit cap a little bit just funky. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got one child. I'm not planning on having any more. And just because the benefit cap's gone up, I'm not then going to go ahead and plan to have any more. I think with all of these tax rises that are upcoming, I think Rachel Reeves is trying to find some favour with the people that she knows will take advantage of her trying to give extra benefits and all that stuff. And I think it's a way to try and get some people on side before she decides to come in and make this announcement that she's going to screw us all. So yeah, interesting one this morning. It's a lot to take in, but yeah, you can see people are going to take advantage of that. And that's going to suddenly make her in favour with some of them. I think that's what she's hoping for anyway. Anyway, I love the show. Have a great day.
Thanks. And Stephanie, I can understand completely. You know, the do-gooders will say, well, what you're saying. What was it Rachel Reeves said? We shouldn't penalise children being born into poverty. But at what point do parents procreating have to go, I can't afford to bring a child into the world. That's not a responsible act. I can't just have a child, right? Knowing that the state will pay for that child. I have to also be responsible. Isn't that part of being a parent? Isn't that why we all go to work? I keep laughing, by the way, the footage we're playing of Rachel Reeves delivering her first budget. Many critics, Rachel from Accounts has. She stood next at that moment to Tulip Sadiq. That was at that time the corruption minister, who's currently lost a job and is fighting corruption charges. And she stood next to Rachel Reeves. Anyway, that won't be lost on my next guest, a man who's writing a book that will basically blow everybody else's book out of the water, including Piers Morgan. A very good morning to Nigel Evans, former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons. Where are you today, dear?
Oh, I'm back in Bromley. I was in Paris over the weekend, though, Jeremy. And I went to Les Invalides, where Napoleon, his tomb is there. And very poignant because that's where Emmanuel Macron will be this morning to have the commemoration ceremony. That's where it'll be starting today in France. I
wanted to say to you about Armistice Day. We've talked already what Armistice Day means, and we had a wonderful text from a lady whose father sadly died last night, aged 102. So many veterans... so many people gave their lives to put us in a position, the liberty, the freedoms, and so many seem to be eroded, and so much belief and trust in this country seems to be evaporating. Before we get into the doom and gloom, Nigel Evans, what, in your opinion, still makes Britain great today? What is great about Great Britain, my friend?
It is us standing on the shoulders of those who've gone before us. So my grandfather fought in the First World War. My father fought in the Second World War. I still got the bugle of my grandfather that he carried on the Somme. And it is only because of the recognition of duty and the importance of what being British is all about. It's that link. It's the link that exists between former generations and hopefully what people like you and I and others watching your program will be able to impart to other people too. The importance of what makes our country great. Yeah, it's tarnished. No two ways about it, Jeremy. But that shouldn't prevent us from wanting to see a much better United Kingdom in the future.
God, you speak well, Evans. No wonder you lasted 30 years. Let's talk about the main news story on the front of the Sun today. Great piece by Jack Elsom. Beeb's billion-dollar bungle. I know I've sort of qualified this all morning, but there's a reason, and you'll get this. He's threatened to sue the BBC for $1 billion unless he gets a full and frank apology by Friday. Starmer says there's nothing wrong. It's stronger than ever. All the do-gooders on the left are running around saying this is just an attempt by Trump to control the mainstream media. I don't want the argument to be lost under this Trump, you know, if you like, legal challenge. I want people at the BBC to answer why all of those instances that I keep repeating, Bob Villan being anti-Semitic whilst the Director General allows that to be streamed for 5 hours, Martin Croxall, a really, really respected newsreader, changing pregnant people to pregnant women. I don't understand why the BBC, and we're watching pictures of Deborah Turness, who was having to leave as the head of news. She came out and said, we're not systematically biased. It's great. We're fantastic. I've total confidence. I don't believe, Nigel Evans, that the majority of people in this country do have the faith that our national state broadcaster is straight down the middle. And I think these problems are not centred on Donald Trump. I think there are many, many deep-rooted problems, and Nigel Farage said it yesterday. Andrew Griffiths said it yesterday. This is a seminal moment for the BBC. You need to be on a level playing field with other broadcasters and prove your bloody worth, because it doesn't stack up anymore, certainly the way they behave. Would you agree?
Yeah, I used to sit on the Culture Committee, and, you know, this is one of the times when I do miss being in the House of Commons, because I'd love to be on that committee again. Chaired by Caroline Dinenage, to have a go at these people because they simply don't get it. You know, yesterday, this morning I listened to Nick Robinson's piece from the Today programme yesterday, and literally he hasn't got the faintest idea. He's basically blaming other people. Well, I've got to tell you, if you don't make the incredible glaring errors that have been made, and you've mentioned a ton of them. The one that does get me as well as Donald Trump's is the Martine Coxell one, because she spoke for an absolute nation when she corrected the auto cue to say pregnant people to pregnant women and rolled her eyes. She spoke for all of us, and it just shows you how appalling the organisation has become, and the fact that Keir Starmer doesn't really get it. And you talk about, what the normal people in this country really believe about the BBC. Well, you've only got to look at the viewing figures to find out exactly what most people do think about them. And this includes the BBC News as well, which used to be the jewel in the crown.
Yeah.
Now, so few people are watching the BBC. If you look at the 16 to 24-year-olds, only 5% of them are watching mainstream media, which includes the BBC, at all. So people are marching with their feet. They're just simply not watching the BBC. But the problem is, Jeremy, we're all forced to pay for it.
I mean, that's to me the issue here. I mean, I've had, before the end of the show, I'll play a repeat of the call out with John Mayer, a BBC producer, deranged. I mean, there is this feeling inside the BBC that they are untouchable. The Royal Charter is not up for a couple of years. 5.39 billion quid. My argument, Nigel, is this, right? The landscape of how people get their news and watch their television programmes has changed. Terrestrial television will never, ever be what it was. Somebody was telling me the other day, Barrymore, before all the problems, would get on a Tuesday evening, I think at 8 o'clock, 20 million for Strike It Lucky, right? You're lucky if you get 1 million viewers now. Terrestrial television has been usurped by, what was it, in the last Rage Hour, I think, the last audience figures, I think YouTube was nearly the #1 way of people watching stuff. People get their news, get their views in different ways, right? The BBC, to me, is this sort of old-fashioned huge thing, a bit like the NHS, that's revered and gets all this money and is untouchable. And that's sort of been all right. But A&1, the landscape's changed and everybody has to be competitive and prove by what they put out that they are a viable business to follow. But secondly, it's allowed the BBC to manufacture a position that I don't think anybody in this country, bar the people that work for the BBC, think is balanced at all or representative of what a national state broadcast could be. I'm amazed that they continue to get away with it. I think it is. And even Turness this morning, walking in saying, I'm proud of journalism. John Mayer, the guy that I spoke to earlier, we'll hear it later, saying, well, it's just the odd mistake. The odd mistake. Doctoring the essential... doctoring Trump's speech isn't just a basic mistake. It's appalling journalism, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not just doctoring it. It is actually to say something completely different to what the president did actually say. And it is appalling. I mean, part of the problem is the umbilical cord between the BBC and its viewers has never been cut. And in a changing atmosphere of where people are actually watching entertainment these days or getting their news has changed completely. The newspapers have all had to gravitate onto the internet. They've had to ensure that there is a stream of income now coming, the monetization of it one way, shape, form or another. The Daily Mail does it via sort of a hybrid subscription and getting adverts at the same time. You've got people like The Times, which do similarly, but have the subscription model as its base. The Telegraph, exactly the same. So it's changed completely, whereas the BBC is holding on to this umbilical cord saying, please feed us, please feed us. And everything has changed. It would have been much, much better 20 years ago had they recognised the changing landscape and decided that they were going to move on to something that was going to be way more futuristic and offering the people what they want. Customer is king when they walk into a shop and buy something. When you're forced to go into a shop and buy something, which is what the BBC are doing, then they can act in the cavalier way that they are, and then to try and justify it when they alter the words of the President of the United States, or the former president as he was, in the way that they did, to mean something completely malicious and vicious in the way that they've done it. But it's not just that. It is the LGBT bias. It is the anti-Semitic bias that is contained within the BBC, or the pro-Hamas bias. I mean, they just simply don't get it. And to come out defending it in the way that they did. It's almost Orwellian for Nick Robertson to basically turn on people who are basically pointing out the bleeding obvious. There's something wrong at the heart of the BBC. And just getting rid of the two at the top, Tim Davie and Trezol, is it her name?
Deborah Turness.
Turness, sorry. Yeah, the head chief exec officer of BBC News. Just getting rid of that couple isn't going to change the
ideology. I'd say it's not going to change the ideology, because I don't think the state broadcaster should have an ideology. We haven't got long, but I want to bring you to something else, and I'm going to make you smile, Nigel Evans. Rachel Thieves has hinted she'll scrap the two-child benefit cap. This is her hinting she'll do it. Yesterday, I think.
I don't think we can lose sight as well of the costs to our economy in allowing child poverty to go unchecked. And in the end, a child should not be penalised because their parents don't have very much money. Lots and lots of different reasons why families change shape and size over time. And I don't think that it's right that a child is penalised because they are in a bigger family through no fault of their own.
Nigel, before I get your response to that, because mine's quite vociferous, this is your old party. Well, I say your current party for now. This is the latest Conservative montage on Rachel Thieves. Enjoy.
Labour will not put up your income tax, national insurance or VAT. We are having to look at taxes.
I'm really clear. I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes.
There is a question of trust, isn't it? What is the point of a manifesto if it doesn't last a day beyond you being elected into office?
Will your promise not to raise rates on income tax, VAT or employees' national insurance hold good for the whole of this Parliament?
Yes, absolutely. It's an absolute commitment. We've now wiped the slate clean. It's now on us. It's now on us.
It would, of course, be possible to stick with the manifesto commitments, but that would require things like deep cuts in capital spending.
That means taxes are going up again, doesn't it?
Well, I'll deliver the budget in a couple of weeks' time. I have been really clear that we are looking at both taxes and spending as part of this budget.
You've made clear that that manifesto promise is going to be broken.
It's now on us. It's now on us.
It's now on us. Nigel Evans, good morning.
Well, I'll tell you what, right? When she says, yeah, we could stick to the manifesto or we could do something else. Well, what is, I think Matt Chorley said exactly the same. What is the use of a manifesto if you're going to deviate from it? Deviated from it in your first budget and now deviate again on it in your second budget. She says she doesn't want to penalise children, but she does want to penalise every taxpayer in this country. And it looks as if she's picking on pensioners as well as a unique select group on which to pick on in order to shift the tax, put income tax up, decrease national insurance, and the one group of people who don't pay national insurance are pensioners. So she's actually picking, she's penalising pensioners in order to break her manifesto promises. The issue on the BBC, Jeremy, is all about trust. The trust now between the viewer and the BBC is absolutely broken, and I don't think can be repaired. And the trust between this government and the voters is now going to be completely and utterly shattered. She has no money. Her choice is not raising taxes and spending more. It is actually to keep her promise on the manifesto and not put up taxes and to spend less money. She hasn't got the money to break the two-child cap.
And it would be,
doesn't have it.
It would be very honest to say she hasn't got the money because, and all the people who say, well, it was inherited, and listen, you know how vocal I was about the Tories' failures, although I think financially we're in a better position. The truth is we hear repeatedly about the black hole, and then you come into power, you spend 11 billion giving raises to your union mates, the junior doctors, who, lo and behold, are coming back for more. You give £16 billion away to the Mauritians, as well as the Chagos Island. That means the Mauritian people won't pay any income tax. Her maths just doesn't add up. For me, the two-child cap benefit, and a lot of people agreeing, a lot of people not agreeing, that's the essence of a democracy. I think, yeah, people should have the right to have kids. 1, 2, fine. But there also surely has to come a point where if you're saying to people who are getting out of bed and going to work and paying their taxes and they've got a couple of kids, or maybe they don't think they should have kids because of their financial situation, we really appreciate all that you're doing and living your life correctly, but we're going to make you pay even more tax to pay for people who've already got 2 kids to have 3, 4, 5 and will continue doling out the money. That is ludicrous. It is yet another example of how this country's intentions are sometimes great, but how the direction of those intentions, in my humble opinion, be it illegal migrants on the welfare state or whatever, is always aimed at the wrong... Whether it's gamed or not, it doesn't make fiscal sense to say, have 5 kids, we'll pay for it. Sorry you're going to work, but you're going to be screwed to pay for that woman sitting at home having 5 children. Doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah. Lifting that cap is going to cost another $3.5 billion. And what is the announcement today? Unemployment's gone up from 4.8% to 5%. That's since this government came to power, we are now having to support another 180,000 people who are on the dole queue. So that £20 billion hole that she spoke about just over a year ago, and she seemed affronted when anybody questioned whether they would be able to not raise taxes. And she said, oh, no, everything's costed. Well, clearly it is not costed. And because of her first budget, unemployment's now gone up. Profitability on industry is far worse, particularly in hospitality. The black hole has got deeper. We can't even see to the bottom of that black hole anymore, Jeremy, and it's getting worse. And this budget that's coming up on November the 26th is going to not be the day that any of us are going to be looking forward to in this country. That we have the most incompetent government, I think, I have ever seen in my lifetime.
Those are strong words. Make sure you keep your diary free for the 26th budget day. You'll be on. Thank you so much indeed. Nigel Evans, 9:24. Don't forget Julia Hartley-Brewer, the Queen of Westminster. The Empress is here from 10 o'clock. Maybe before for a brief chat. We'll get your calls on. We'll get your tokes texts even. That's Paul from Manchester. God, Jez, it's about time the BBC woke up and smelt the coffee. Defund them. It's a joke. I like this. Margaret. JK, what is great about our country? Grit and determination. Our sense of humour, and boy, do we need it now. Our loyalty to the flag and the royal family. Our kindness to others. But we need our country back. My uncle, aged 24, was killed in action. That makes me proud. He gave his life for king and country. The younger generation could do with understanding that. You would talk breakfast. We will go to this ad break. Mark, good morning.
Hi, Jeremy. Mark from Manchester. So we had Nigel saying that he scrapped the 2-child benefit for British working couples, but now Labour are going to scrap it for everybody. So they're scrapping it for everybody and they're going to give them cash. Why are you giving cash? Because all they're going to do is go out and get tattoos and cigarettes and alcohol. If you're going to give child benefit should be in food vouchers only. And should be like America, how Trump's just turned it there. No sweet food, just healthy food. Great show, Jezza.
firstly, the new Director General, whoever that is, needs to get a grip very quickly.
Who should it be? Who would your choice be?
That's a matter for the board of BBC. The only thing
I'm giving you the choice right now, Sir John. You can have anyone you want. Who would you want? Apart from yourself.
I'd love to do it, but I don't think that would go. I don't think that's a realistic possibility. No, but what I would say is that I hope that it's not somebody who is, a BBC lifer, someone who's spent their entire career within the BBC.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's on till 10. Julia here from 10 o'clock and Ian Collins sounding great from 1 o'clock this afternoon. That's how we line up on the home of free speech. And by the way, more of you listening, more of you coming, more of you speaking. Really appreciate that. 0344 499 1000. Russell Harper, good morning. He says the BBC will end up like Kodak. They were told digital was the way to go in photography, but they ignored advice and stuck to the 36mm film. And look where they are now. The corporation, the BBC, is dead. It just doesn't know it yet. He's in Alicante. He's seen the light. Can I just tell you this? I know it's irrelevant, but it's the way I do radio. My wife said, we've got 5 days in Spain. Is that all right in February? I said, yes. She said, we went before. I said, yes, just get some flights to Malaga, book the hotel. Phoned me up and went, have you booked the hotel? I went, yes. She went, I booked the flights, but I booked them to Alicante. And I went, well, that's not very good because it's about 600 miles apart. Never been to Alicante, Russ, but it looks like I'm coming. Ted Stewart, good morning. In my front garden stands a plaque of a soldier kneeling by a grave, and underneath it says, freedom isn't free. Please remember this. Do you know what, Ted? Could not agree with you more. Damon from Wigan says, I will show the ultimate respect to our fallen heroes this morning, Jez, at 11 a.m. And I'm very, very proud to have served in the British Army. However, I think Britain is in serious trouble and every part of our country is failing on a massive scale. The British government is doing nothing to protect the British people, and we are truly feeling like we've been left on our own. Was it worth it, myself in the army during the 90s? No, because I don't recognise this country, and I sadly think it's only going to get worse. Thank you, Jezza. So many people on this day, more than any other day, Armistice Day, the 11th of November, the day that the Allies in Germany after the First World War signed the agreement that brought the bloodshed to an end. Listen, I talk from my own experience maybe too often on this show, but I have a couple of kids at university who are being indoctrinated in everything that's woke and left-wing, and I spend my life trying to make them realise how important the past was. Not just the people who served and how we treat them now, but those who lost their lives, that actually where we are, however bad it might appear to be, would not be anything without those people. And I think it's really important at 11 o'clock today that we all show our respect and we all do what is fundamentally right for this country. We can sit here and argue about Trump and the BBC and this government, but the very essence of Britain, the very essence of this country was built on our forefathers and our foremothers. And the day that we do not accept that, I mean, I'm waiting for somebody to tell me that we shouldn't be proud. Well, I am proud. I am proud of Britain in terms of what it was, what it does, and potentially what it can be, and the people that made it that way. Jason Paul is an armed forces veteran who was blown up in Afghanistan. He faced major problems with addiction and PTSD on returning to Civvy Street. However, with support of the charity, the Armed Forces community and loved ones, he's making a great recovery. Jace, total and utter respect, my friend, an honour to have you on the show this morning. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, and I'm very humbled to be on the show.
Remembrance Sunday, I was really pleased to be talking about yesterday. Seemed to be more more people were at places across the UK, we are told, than ever before. At a time when we have these ridiculous discussions about the flag, and quite rightly we talk about immigration and the vetting of young men. Remembrance is so important. Today is Armistice Day. Put it in your words, Bud, for my viewers and listeners. Somebody who, was blown up. Let's just get that right. Blown up in Afghanistan and has found the transition back so difficult. What does it mean to you, my friend, today?
For me, it's obviously on a personal level, it's a hugely humbling experience. And when I see all these people paying their respects and, momentarily putting differences aside for whatever discussion may be, being had at that moment, for people to be able to put that aside for the moment and just honour and respect, from past, present, and obviously what may happen in the future. It's just a massive thing that people can show that love and respect for the armed forces community, because obviously, like myself and people before me that, lives are put on the line, people who had families, dropped everything to obviously be on that front line and to protect our country and to try to keep our country great.
When you, I don't know if you're prepared to talk about it, you know me, but if you don't want to, I'm cool. Are you prepared to say what happened to you in Afghanistan?
Yeah, I was the front man on a routine foot patrol, just going through a village. We crossed the junction, and fortunately, I was involved in an explosion, but it did only partially detonate, so I was quite lucky. I only lost hearing in my left ear, and that was it. Obviously, there's lots of men and women before me who, weren't as fortunate. They lost their lives, and they paid the ultimate sacrifice. But I'm sure they were proud of, everything they did in the military, and, all their friends and family can be greatly proud of, what they gave for our country.
There's one thing I wanted to say to you, Kiddo, which is really interesting. Of course, people lose their lives in their duty, in their line of duty, and that is terrible. But one of the things that I've always felt ever since I did the other show is that we never, ever show enough respect and care for those who come back. My wife's friends with a guy who was in the armed forces, and what he saw when he tries to tell you he can't do it, it's affected his life. You had real issues with addiction and PTSD, and I don't think enough is spoken about that. I think, apart from how I find it abhorrent that veterans are on the street, I also find it disgusting that our society does not say to our armed forces, Jesus Christ, you saw people killed, you were blown up, you had to deal with that, and we'll just ferry you back and expect we'll wipe the backsides of people who shouldn't be in this country. But how bad was it? What was your low point, Jace?
For me personally, I think it was a couple of years after I come out, and for me, my PTSD seemed to be, it was delayed, so to speak, for a couple of years, and I just started making certain choices, drinking more, taking drugs, and then I just spiraled, and to be honest with you, there was a point I didn't think I was going to stop spiraling, because I was really, really bad. The Royal British Legion were, absolutely amazing with me. The stuff they've done for me and are continuing to do for me, I will never be able to thank them enough. They're absolutely exceptional. And I'm doing a fundraising event for them in 32 days' time. I'm walking from Chester to London and back. All in 12 days to raise vital funds so the Royal British Legion can continue the amazing work that they do for the armed forces community and all their families. So, yeah, I reached a point where I thought, enough is enough. You're 38 years of age now, you kind of need to pull it together. So I did, and I've not looked back. But I do agree. I think that the support isn't anywhere near as good as what it should be and could be. It has massively improved, it has improved tenfold, but I do think there's a lot more room for improvement, because obviously there is a lot of people out there that are struggling. And I want people to reach out, I want people to know that in that time when they're suffering, they feel like they've got nowhere to turn. There's always a place to turn, contact the Royal British Legion, speak out to families, just don't be scared. I would much rather sit on the phone and speak to somebody for 2 hours than have to attend their funeral, and try and get them to the place where I've managed to get myself to.
I'll tell you something, Amazing. And the RBL, the Royal British Legion, you're absolutely right. A phenomenal job. And it says very little about the rest of society that it seems that charities have to do the work. But to all the men and women, and so, I mean, just want to say, there's helplines, obviously, we'll put information up for people, but feel free to contact this show. What I say to every person in uniform that I ever meet, who are either in it or out of it, I thank them, because I think this country still doesn't quite understand the impact, the good impact, the bad impact, personally, so many soldiers, men and women have. And as I say, if you need help like Jason needed, the Royal British Legion is absolutely it. There's other helplines as well, but Jason's is a story of real hope. And put me down for a few quid. Get your details online. I'll sponsor you on that walk, my friend, and just total respect for you coming on the show this morning.
Can I just say to people who are listening, if they want to get behind my fundraiser, if you go online and just search for Jason's Road to Redemption, you'll find my page online, and please feel free to donate and share. It's greatly appreciated.
I'm going to put it out there, Jason's Road to Redemption. Put that in Google and sponsor a guy who was on the front line in Afghanistan for our liberty, ladies and gentlemen. There was an explosion. He nearly lost his life, not through that explosion, because of the transition back, the addiction caused by PTSD, but the Royal British Legion dragged him by his bootstraps, and he's walking from Chester to London and back. Geez, that's a long way. That's a long way to walk, to raise money for an organisation that really does good. Jace, it's a real honour, mate. Put me down, as I said, for a few quid, and we hope to speak very soon, and good luck with that walk, all right? Jason Paul, Armed Forces veteran, great to have you on. This is Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 19 minutes to 9. Just to repeat that website, Jason's Road to Redemption. Fantastic story there from Jason Paul, military veteran on this very important day, Armistice Day, the 11th of November. Silence at 11 o'clock. Let's show respect, let's show restraint, and let's show commitment to the past, which might might just give us a chance in the future. Bill's in Cheshire. Jez, during my long military service through the 80s, 90s and 2000s, I was sent to Hong Kong to protect the border from illegal immigrants from China. We used to capture, record and immediately return. Now we just let them invade our homeland and pay them for the privilege. I utterly regret my military service as a pointless exercise. That makes me sad, that does. Really important time of year. Now, when we're talking about the BBC, which we have been all day, front page of The Sun, the Beebs billion-dollar bungle, great article by Jack Elsom. Donald Trump, of course, demanding a full apology from the BBC by Friday, or he's going to sue them for $1 billion. What really annoyed me about this was that's important, but that apart from the fact that our Prime Minister goes, well, everything's fine, they've never been stronger. The reality is that mistake after mistake after mistake by the BBC has got them to a point where I don't think our national broadcaster is trusted. I don't think it's unbiased. I don't think it's impartial. I think it's a joke. Nobody would know this better. The former editor of the Today programme on the BBC. I haven't seen this man for ages. Rod Liddle, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Jeremy. How are you doing?
I'm good, my friend. Thank you for taking time. I've tried not to smile too much over the last 2 days, but there is one thing I want to say to you. I get the Trump thing, but what really has annoyed me is that all the people at the BBC and people, the commentators slightly on the left, are using this now as there's nothing wrong with the BBC, this is Trump jumping in, this is horrible Trump trying to control us. The truth is that if you look at Savile, you look at Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Martin Croxall, the Hamas documentary, Bob Villan or whatever that vile anti-Semite was, allowed to say that on stage at Glastonbury whilst they continued to stream it on the BBC. This isn't just a one-off mistake. This is a catalogue and an example, I would say, of an institution that gets given £5.39 billion a year and is abused that position as our national broadcaster. What do you say, Rod?
Yeah, I agree. And the problem for the incoming Director General, whoever that might be, and it'll probably be a bad appointment because they usually are, is to listen to the BBC's output yesterday. If they'd listened to the BBC's output yesterday, they would have heard an organisation in complete and utter denial about what had happened and what is wrong with the BBC, to the extent that we had Nick Robinson puffed up with his own self-importance, making a statement in defence of the BBC when he's supposed to be a neutral broadcaster. He was kind of demonstrating the very points which the people who have been criticising the BBC have been making for a very, very long time. It is partisan and it is biased. And you say people slightly to the left. It's not really people slightly to the left. It's people on the far left. The BBC isn't kind of softly left-wing biased. It's hard left-wing biased. Take one example. There isn't another news organisation in the country which has an LGBTQ unit and correspondent. ITN doesn't have one. We don't have one. You know, at News UK, we don't have an LGBTQ correspondent, but the BBC does. And it's got it into lots of trouble because it's been tendentious and very, very pro the most extreme views of the trans community. Why has it got an LGBTQ unit? Why? And the answer is because it has swallowed all the far left identitarian ideas, you know, about trans, about gender, about race. And it feels, it puts everyone into these silos. It sees everything through a prism of gender and race. And that's not a soft left position. That's a hard left position.
I couldn't agree more. And for me, it's complete denial, absolutely. Meltdown. You saw Deborah Tenness walking in yesterday, or even, yesterday, yesterday morning, the head of the news who'd had to resign, saying, I've complete confidence in the impartiality. The truth of the matter is, surely it's this. In a landscape that's changed in terms of how we get our news and our television, the rest of us, in our mere mortals in our organisations, have to really survive only by the audience we get that results in people advertising. That's basic layman's terms. To be wanting to increase a licence fee on an organisation that gets billions of pounds and abuses abuses it, as you quite rightly saying, on an altar of ideology that not a majority of people recognise in this country. They're smug. That's what I've been trying to search for the word all morning. Whenever you hear from anybody at the BBC, they're smug because nobody had to challenge them. Yes, there's the Charter coming up, but I do not believe that the BBC, as I knew it when I was growing up, is the place that people do go for now when somebody dies or there's a catastrophe. They go elsewhere, and the BBC should be forced to move with the times. Yes, they do good programming, but their news, I think, is so biased, Rod, just completely out of touch. I really do.
Yes, and it's out of touch on a number of issues. I mean, for Deborah Turness to say that everything's fine, we're not remotely biased. Twice a week, the BBC had to put out corrections to the BBC Arabic services reports from Gaza. You know, twice a week they were spewing out lies which were deeply offensive to the Jewish community in this country, and indeed to the rest of us who you know, aren't decked out in keffiyehs and nose rings, and also misrepresenting the battle between the Israelis and Hamas. And she was the one who signed off on the documentary, you know, which was
voiced by a Hamas's son, and there was paid money for it. Yeah.
And yet there was still nothing in her goodbye letter which suggested that she was remotely contrite about anything she'd done. And so we have this idea, and they're climbing down into the rabbit hole, that this is a conspiracy by the right wing. Well, a conspiracy by the right wing. It was their own editorial advisor who actually put before the BBC a dossier of all the areas in which it had been misrepresenting the views, misrepresenting the idea of neutrality completely, and put before them this dossier which they refused to take notice of. They actually refused to take notice of it. And that is that there are two problems with the BBC. One is that the executives simply do not accept that there's a problem, so they should get rid of them. And the second thing is the vast majority of the people who are working at the BBC, it's a political monoculture. They don't believe they're left-wing. They believe they're just civilized and decent, nice human beings. But that is why, over time, they misrepresent issues from abortion, immigration, Israel, transgender issues, race issues, colonialism issues. They misrepresent them. They don't think it's politics. They think it's just being decent and civilized, and it isn't.
Couldn't agree more, mate. You know me, I could talk to you for hours. We can't leave it that long next time. Please come back. It's so good to have you on. The excellent Rod Liddle, columnist for The Sun and former editor of the Today programme, talking about how he sees the BBC. And as ever, he absolutely nails it. It's 10 to 10. This is Talk Breakfast.
The alternative of speaking German or being ruled by the Nazis or, seeing terrorism flourish in the middle in Afghanistan, I think that's worse. It's not a question of being worth it. And I understand. Look, I mean, of course, I can't understand in the same way. I didn't lose as many friends as he did, and I didn't serve in Normandy and all the rest of it. Do I think that things are going awry in various different ways? Of course I do. But do I think the alternative of being ruled by Nazis is just horrific? I'm eternally grateful for the extraordinary courage and sacrifice of those people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Morning glory on till 10. Julia Hartley-Brewer earlier, as this BBC argument sort of escalated and lots of you were saying, defund it, get rid of the licence fee. It's a disgrace. It's not institutionally biased. It's a fantastic example. We searched high and low for anybody to defend the BBC, and we alighted upon former BBC producer John Mayer. I'm going to replay this because in the end, I think I got PTSD as well. Have a listen.
The BBC bends over backwards, to be fair to people. It bent over backwards on Brexit and other things. It bends over backwards.
It bent over backwards to look after Hugh Edwards, Gary Lineker, Greg Wallace and Bob Villan, but it didn't bend over backwards to look after Martine Croxall when she dared to say pregnant women. Come on, John.
That was just stupid. I mean, and the Trump mistake was absolutely stupid. So look, this is a national broadcaster, 104 years old, which produces brilliant programmes, which is what they should do.
Are you programmed by the BBC yourself? Have you actually got a chip inside you that just keeps repeating the same stuff? Because it doesn't add up, John. It doesn't add up.
Jeremy, I've just edited a book called The BBC After the Licence Fee, which says, look, the BBC's got to look at life after the licence fee.
Nigel Farage said yesterday on this show that the BBC needs to understand that it should play on a level playing field like everybody else. It should be defunded and it should stand on its own 2 feet. And before you jump in, what was your example, traitors? I add Strictly. I add your coverage of the Lionesses World Cup final, 12.2 million people trumping you. I know you don't like that word, but I would suggest that if you became a subscription service, John Mayer, your very good programmes would encourage people to pay for it. But I bet you any money, whatever you tell me, people would not pay to watch your news because your news is institutionally biased. Fact.
Without the BBC, there wouldn't be room for things like Talk and things like GB News, because the BBC is straight down the line. There's room on the right for people like you, for people GB News, for Farage. So,
there's room for people like me, Farage and GB News on the right. You're doing it again. The BBC... how would you describe the BBC?
Straight down the line, too straight down the line.
You've got to be winding me up. Have you taken something overnight, man? What's wrong with you? What?
The BBC is institutionally fair.
It's institutionally biased. How can you possibly... Right, so explain to me how a senior BBC editorial advisor yesterday said that its coverage of the US presidential election was found to be markedly anti-Trump and pro-Harris. That's an internal review. Can you please stop spouting the same rubbish and explain that to me?
That was Michael Prescott, former political editor of Sunday Times, who said that. And the BBC should take account of that. And they should have taken account of it 6 months ago when he said it, instead of allowing it...
What about allowing Bob Villan to shout death, death to the IDF? How did you feel about that? Was that acceptable straight down the line, was it?
That's a mistake.
Oh, it's another one. So we've got two, yeah? What about Martine Croxall? What about Martine Croxall saying pregnant woman and being censured for daring not to say pregnant people? Was that a mistake?
That's just stupid. That's just the BBC thought police being stupid.
Oh, right, so that's three of them. What about Hugh Edwards? Right, hear me out. No, I haven't finished. Hugh Edwards, who is still getting his pension, the pedo, and walking around. Why doesn't the BBC do everything in its power, hear me out, rather than, I don't know, internally reviewing Martin Croxall. Why don't you get the thought police at your institution to get the money back of the British taxpayers who are paying for that paedophile to walk around the United Kingdom? Can you explain that to me?
I agree. I agree.
So that's 4 things. So we basically agree.
You're on a roll, Jeremy. You're on a roll.
I am on a roll. Listen, fair play. Obviously rolled out to defend the BBC, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it is down to you guys to make up your mind. That headline in The Sun today, Donald Trump is apparently going to sue the BBC. Trump should sue the BBC. An apology will not do. Shut down the British bashing corporation. They are utterly biased. God only knows what they're saying to the world in various other language. I am non-white, non-English, and I'm a British citizen. I stand with people who put Britain first, fully support all of our armed forces, past and present, respect to those who gave their lives so we can enjoy the freedoms we gave today. What a great way to sum it up. 11 o'clock today. Silence, of course, on Armistice Day for the thousands, hundreds of thousands of men and women who gave their lives to give this country the freedoms and the liberty that it has, despite the fact... sorry, the top one, Brian. Just to follow up on your earlier caller saying what's still great about Britain, and he said having a few pints at the pub with mate. Well, that's assuming he can find a pub that's open, he can afford a £7 pint, he doesn't want to have a cigarette in the garden, and he's willing to risk being knifed on the way home on the bus. Very good morning. Jesus God. Morning, Julia.
Morning. God, that escalated quickly, didn't it?
Yeah, John Mayer. Yeah.
Do you know what, though? You were saying, I just think so many people, and I think particularly young people, do not appreciate how significant days like this are. And, you know, the Remembrance Sunday as well, obviously, and just the importance of remembering, you know, the incredible sacrifices that previous generations have made, so that we can all sit and abuse each other on social media if that is what people want to do, and we can broadcast, we can do what we do. The BBC can do what it does, whatever the hell it thinks it's doing this week. I don't think people understand how different the world would be